Testing.
Great. Thank you.
Still buffering, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are live.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of April 20th, 2022. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting today on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples. And so we do have a full agenda today. Best to get started with the first item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First item is approval of the agenda.
Okay, moved, seconded. Any additions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is adoption of the minutes. Item M1. The recommendation before you is that the minutes of the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of April 6, 2022 be adopted.
Okay, any mover for that? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is M2, and the recommendation before you is that the minutes of the special Electoral Area Services Committee meeting of April 7th be adopted.
Thank you. Moved, seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Next item is business arising from the minutes. There is none. Following that is public input period. And I have one applicant who is attending virtually, Mr. David Slade, and I'll just admit him.
Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome, Mr. Slade.
Hello there. Am I on deck?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay, is my 3 minutes starting now?
Ms. Harrison, I believe it is. Yeah, thank you. It's good to know that you know that.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, well, my name is David Slade, and I'm speaking to you today as a representative of Friends of Rails to Trails Vancouver Island about why we believe that this is the worst possible time to be investing in trails beside the rails along any part of the ENN rail corridor. The ENN corridor, owned by the Island Corridor Foundation, is an amazing public asset, but after more than 10 years of waiting and watching the infrastructure rust and rot away, we believe it is past time to embrace other exciting opportunities. 3 First Nation members of the ICF have expressed their desire in court to have the corridor land returned to their reservations. The courts have given the ICF 18 months, with less than 12 months remaining to come up with a meaningful, workable plan to restore rail service or risk the loss of those sections of the corridor that are on reserve land. Return of these lands, stolen more than 100 years ago to the affected First Nations, would force a change of mandate for the ICF and open the door for other uses of the rail bed. In the spirit of reconciliation, returning that stolen land is the right thing to do. What about rail with trail? It is difficult and or expensive to the point of impossible to put a trail beside the rails through the one tunnel, the multitude of rock cuts, embankments, ravines, and swamps, and the more than 40 bridges and trestles along the coastal corridor. For cost comparison, the Cowichan Valley Trail was completed in 2011 at a cost of $30,000 per kilometer, compared to more than $600,000 per kilometer for the current Seanagan Lake proposal. This is 20 times more expensive per kilometer than a typical rail-to-trail conversion. The Great Allegheny Passage in Pennsylvania is an example of a rail-to-trail conversion of similar length, community connections, and population base. It generates $121 million in annual economic impact and provides almost 1,400 jobs. This trail sees 1 million person visits per year. Many tens of thousands are trips that made on bikes that would otherwise have been made in vehicles, significantly increasing the safety for riders and walkers and reducing emissions from transportation. Regional districts are backing away from the ICF. The Nanaimo Regional District and the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District have already reallocated the funds they held in trust for the ICF. And the Comox Valley Regional District has voted to withhold their contribution until after April 2023, pending the outcome of the Sa'Naas Nanuus First Nations court case. And they have instructed their ICF board representative to move and or support a motion to allow consideration of other uses, including active transportation on the rail bed. I would like to encourage the CBRD to also hold or reallocate the $500,000 held in trust for the ICF and to direct your ICF representative to move and or support a motion for a change of the ICF mandate to allow active transportation on the unused sections of the derelict rail bed. In conclusion, I would like to repeat that this is the worst possible time to invest hundreds of thousands of tax dollars in a trail beside rail project, as it is very likely that within 1 or 2 years it will become redundant and fall into disuse if the envisioned active transportation route is created. At this moment in time, the stars are aligning for the possible creation of a 224-kilometer long, world-class active transportation corridor that will benefit all of us for generations to come. In addition,
excuse me, David. Sorry, you're out of time. Sorry, David. Okay. Sorry, we others have the benefit of the red light, but thank you for that.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next applicant is in the gallery, and his name is Ben Neal. If you'd like to step up to the podium, please.
Good. Welcome, Mr. Neal. Sorry, we can't hear you, Mr. Neal.
IT's just fixing their.
Okay, thank you.
Test?
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman and CVRD directors, my name is Ben Neal, and I'm a 6-year resident in a suite at 3570 Telegraph Road, Cobble Hill, which is being recommended for rezoning. See application number RZ21C01. I'm speaking today in strong opposition to the recommendation, as the consequences would be dire for me. I am a 77-year-old retired working man. My source of income is the old age pension and a guaranteed income supplement for low-income seniors, plus a small CPP. If the recommendation is approved, I would be evicted and be forced to lose my beloved home. My landlady, Jane, the applicant, is a very responsible and supportive person whose kindness in providing my affordable rental of $900 per month is very much appreciated. There is a serious housing crisis in our area, and I could not afford anything in this market. Jane is also a senior on a meager pension. Consequently, she rents her 4 small tourist sleeping units to provide a livable income for herself as a single parent with a daughter living at home. Apparently, my suite has been a permitted rental for over 20 years, so I cannot understand why anything needs to change. This is 2 houses. I have the Swanson appraisal document of 2005 that includes a copy of the CVRD bylaw showing this residential zone permitted uses as a single-family residential dwelling, a second residential dwelling, a bed and breakfast accommodation, a small suite, and secondary suite on a parcel of this size. I can provide this appraisal. The recommendation for a multi-unit dwelling would mean my suite and the rest of the 2 houses would need to be deconstructed and rebuilt to the code for an apartment building. This is a vastly different requirement than the present residential code. For example, one of many required alterations is for wired smoke and CO2 detectors being installed throughout 2 houses. This would require removal of vast amounts of drywall and insulation, etc. The end result of this, if I burned my toast, approximately 20 alarms would go off simultaneously everywhere, and this would be very disruptive for guests and myself. This change to multi-unit apartment code means several months of construction work and would cost far in excess of $100,000. I could not live here during the process, nor could anyone else. Jane could not afford this work, nor the loss of income. This property is a peaceful and restful rural tourist accommodation. I also need a peaceful and tranquil, affordable rental for my golden years. Do not support this staff recommendation that would make me homeless. I thank you for your compassion and understanding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next speaker is Athena Archer.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to speak. I saw the article in The Citizen, and this is something that's very near to my heart, having been in the rural tourism industry since 1981, and my mother-in-law before that for many years, and we had a lot of struggles trying to get farm stays approved throughout the district. This is something that's very popular in England and the rest of Europe. So I know how important it is to the local economy, as it certainly was to us. I just will read the letter that I had written. So I was drawn to the article in The Citizen regarding Jane Barton Grieg and the intention to turn her establishment into a commercial tax property. Rural tourism is a great incentive for travelers who do not wish to stay in a hotel but prefer to visit locals with history and information on the local area. My husband, Daryl Archer, and I offered bed and breakfast accommodation plus a small self-contained cottage on our farm for 36 years. And my mother-in-law was instrumental in the approval of farm stays in British Columbia in the early 1970s. Our experience has been a close relationship with many guests who returned year after year or who referred Fairburn to others as an ideal holiday venue in the beautiful Cowichan Valley. In view of this, I find it hard to understand why Jane's property is not suitable for visitors in her home and small outbuildings. It would seem that the criteria for rural tourism should be adjusted to allow for her type of hospitality. It would be a loss to the Cowichan Valley if hers and possibly others like hers would be unavailable to visitors in the area. When my mother was alive in the UK, our visits included staying in places with self-contained catering accommodation, either on a farm or near a village. We hope you'll give due consideration to allowing rural tourism to flourish in our picturesque Cowichan Valley without onerous tax implications. This is a very important thing for the local economy. We had guests who returned year after year, recommended that people come here, and it was considered the jewel on Vancouver Island, the Cowichan Valley. And these people did not want to stay in a hotel. They wanted to interact with local people, and it was very successful, and we thoroughly enjoyed it through all the years until we retired. Thank you for considering this.
Thank you, Ms. Archer. Anyone else? Ms. Harrison?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We probably have time for one more speaker, and then you may wish to consider entertaining a recommendation to extend the time period. I still have 7 people on the list to speak.
Okay. We'll have one more and then visit it. Thank you.
The next speaker is David Weeb.
Okay. Hey, welcome, Mr. Weeb.
Oh, thanks for having me. Area directors, you have before you today a vote, yes or no, to phase 3 of the rail trail along the water's edge. A decision to allow a massive man-made gravel trail to rip through the shoreline of our beloved Seanagan Lake, a lake that the local landowners and lake users have been trying to protect for a long time. The song "You Pave Paradise and Put Up a Parking Lot" comes to mind. An estimated 50 trees to be demolished, some mature trees that tower over 100 feet high, 3,000 square meters of vegetation to be ripped out, all to be replaced with 150 dump truck loads of non-native gravel fill, which in many cases sit below the high water mark and becomes part of the lake in the winter. This will change the shoreline forever. This will leach back into the lake and affect the health of Seanagan Lake forever. When you vote, I implore you to use the following hierarchy of importance. Environment first, the health of Seanagan Lake first, human convenience second. When we look back at history, it's easy to say, why did they do that? How could they make those decisions then when we clearly see how wrong they are now? It's too early to vote on this. We haven't exhausted the other options. A main viable option of the trail on the rail, which the court decision is coming in 11 months, which will determine the fate ICF and the track. So why rush this decision? It was clear at the area director meeting last night that there hasn't been much research into that option. Wouldn't it be prudent to exhaust the option of using existing infrastructure of the existing rail line versus bulldozing the shoreline and dumping gravel into the lake? Will our grandchildren look back and say, what were they thinking? Shouldn't the CVRD be role models with how they treat riparian areas? How can the CVRD expect waterfront homeowners to honor the riparian areas when they clearly have no reverence for the riparian areas themselves if voted yes today? Do as I say, not as I do leadership is not true leadership. The decision is in your hands. Don't be on the wrong side of history. Don't pave paradise and put up a parking lot. Let it be said that you did everything in your power to protect the environment and the health of Seanagan Lake. Let that be your legacy. Thank you. And if I have extra time, the general public doesn't know about the details of where this trail is going, the trees being demolished, the gravel below the high water mark, etc. There isn't enough information to vote on this. There's no detailed design.
Thank you, Mr. Weeb. All right, Ms. Harrison, I think we're at our 15 minutes. So if the rules are that we can extend public input period with a 2/3 majority.
So
All
moved.
in, okay, moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next speaker is Ian Anderson.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hey, welcome, Mr. Anderson.
Yes. Just thank you so much for extending the period of time. That's what I came to ask you for, because we have some speakers like Dave Mundy and that want to talk. So I won't take up my time or your time. And thank you for extending that time for some of our other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next speaker is Matthew Jones.
Hey, welcome, Mr. Jones. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Jones, I think your mic is muted. Oh, still muted.
Is that better, Mr. Chair?
There we go.
Thank you
There we
very
go.
much. Hi,
We
Matthew.
didn't start the clock.
Hi,
so
my
you
name
know.
is Matthew Ronald Jones. I've lived full-time at 2582 Lavinia Road in Seanagan Lake for the past 18 years with my wife and 2 children. 2582 Lavinia is near the Water Ski Club and on the specific Phase 3 that we're referring to today. I've also been part of the Area B Parks Commission Advisory Board for the last 10 years, and I'm currently the chair. I'm here today to share with you that I am in favor of you voting yes today and moving forward with Phase 3 of Railwood Trail. By voting yes today, we confirm our confidence in the CVRD Parks Department and their ability to build and maintain trails and parks to a world-class standard. We confirm that Seanagan Lake Parks Master Plan is pivotal in the development of supporting Seanagan Lake as a destination on southern Vancouver Island. We confirm that our trail will be built to the highest environmental standards. We confirm that our trail will welcome people of all abilities. We confirm we have a unique opportunity to connect 4 parks, if not more, if we include Gallant and Old Baldy Mountain. We confirm and respect all neighboring properties with legal entities, etc., will be honored. We respect that the Island Corridor Foundation has provided an opportunity to work together similar to the Capital Regional District, North Cowichan, the Regional District of Nanaimo, and the Comox Valley Regional District. Thank you very much for your consideration and commitment to advancing this community project with no further delays and no further cost increases. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Okay, next speaker, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next speaker on the list is Dave Mundy.
Okay. Welcome, Mr. Mundy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and CVRD directors. We'll consider this a refresher course. I spoke with you in June of 2021 on the issue of the RV, of the SVRT. So Seanagan Lake is a fish-bearing waters, and work on or near the water will require an authorization from Fisheries and Oceans. That's a given. This is the manual called Policy for Applying Measures to Offset Adverse Effects on Fish and Fish Habitat under the Fisheries Act. And this is legislation that applies in this case. So at the time that I spoke, nothing has changed. The math is simple. The impacts from the project could be as high as 15,900 square meters. And although the inflation's occurring, my number from when I was a consultant is that it's about $60 a square meter for creating new habitat, which is a requirement of the Fisheries Act. So that comes out to about $1.8 million, which is well in excess of the engineering and construction costs, which is not abnormal for projects like this that are in sensitive water areas. So I wanted to just reiterate that I think as responsible people responsible for decision-making, there's a very large number out there that's undefined and needs to be defined. Also, the federal process, this is the Federal Fisheries Act, it's quite an open process. There's actually a national registry. So for any project that comes before comes before the fisheries people, which require an authorization, it is posted to a website, and so that everybody can see what projects are under consideration. And right now, this project is not under consideration by the federal government. So I would recommend, because the numbers could be big, there are ways of getting around it, and avoidance is one. Avoidance would mean the trail would go on the rail, not beside the rail. So that's one way of getting around it. Anyway, I just want to make sure that you're aware that there's a large number out there lurking if we go with a rail beside the trail, or a trail beside the rail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Monday. The next speaker, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next speaker is Netta Bose.
Okay. Welcome, Ms. Bose.
Thank you. I've been a member of the Seanagan Lake community for over 30 years, and during that time, one topic has been the safety of our roads, namely the lack of shoulders for walking and bicycling. There have been many meetings where residents have come together to express their want for safe mobility corridors. I think Seanagan plan was created with community output that outlined the need for increased walkability. The Seanagan Lake Village Park Playground Review led to a new park at Old Mill Park. Doug Griffiths presented on ways to enhance our natural amenities, and Tanel Bolt, a mobility consultant confined to a wheelchair herself, wheeled from the community center through the village to the Government Wharf Park, highlighting how unsafe our shoulders are and how what is there is a hazard. All this took place in 2019 before COVID. Last night, I joined parents at a meeting held at St. John's Academy, where we discussed the proposed expansion of the campus. The number one parent concern was the safety of their children. As our children get older, we expect them to become more independent. Without public transit, the only way for them to get around is either by walking or biking. In 2007, a 15-year-old was struck and killed while walking the shoulder within our community, and his passing resonated deeply. I sit on the board of the Seanagan Lake Community Center and know that the children from Elsie Miles go to the new playground at Old Mill Park. They are looking forward to the day when they can walk the children from the community center to the park. Without a safe walking corridor, which the next phase of the rail trail would provide, they are bused to the park. I currently live on the west side, and my property backs on the Trans-Canada Trail. I remember when this trail was being proposed, people were afraid of it, thinking that it would increase vandalism, ATV traffic, and decrease property value. It has done the opposite. I have seen B&Bs pop up that now cater to those outdoor enthusiasts that come from outside our community to visit the Kinsel Trestle, the museum, and spend overnight within Seanagan. As it stands now, there is no place for people to walk safely within the village other than the current rail trail. The expansion would provide unobstructed mobility for strollers, bikers, walking, wheelchair, and for those with other mobility issues. As Seanagan has grown and will continue to grow, there is an increased need for a safe pedestrian corridor. That need isn't going away. Contrary to what some of the community have been saying, this rail trail is not new news, and we've been waiting for it for a number of years. This is about doing what's right for the community as a whole. I know many, if they could be here, would vote along with myself to a yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bush. The next speaker, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next speaker is Burnett.
Hi,
Hey,
thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Burnett.
Several years ago, I was also on the Parks and Recreation Committee with Seanagan Lake, and I have to apologize to all of my friends in Seanagan because I think it was my proposal at that time that started the rail or the trail concept, except that then I proposed it to be on the rails and kind of a racehorse of a trail, and now it's turned into this camel that is not workable, is extremely expensive, and extremely destructive. At a meeting last night, there was about 35 people with the area director, and every last person that was there was in favor of a trail. They were not in favor of the current trail because the proposal is simply bad. It's expensive, destructive, and will affect the lake. Waiting for a few months until the fate of the railroad is determined, which most of us tend to feel that the trail will, or the rail will never see a train again, is not that difficult, and we would have then a proper trail which is inexpensive and wouldn't destroy the property values of the people whose properties are split by the railroad. So in conclusion, I would just say it is far better to wait and be safe than it would be to plow ahead now and make a few terrible mistakes, which is what this trail is. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Burnett. Next speaker, please, Ms. Harrison.
The last person I have on the speakers list is Rick Kowalik. Hope I'm
Okay.
pronouncing that correctly.
It's all right.
Welcome.
Nobody gets it right.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman and CVRD directors, my name is Rick Kowalowicz. It's pronounced different in Ukrainian, but pronounce it however you want. I'm one of the members of the advisory group in Seanagan Lake, and I'm here on my own accord. No one has said, hey, Rick, go and do a presentation or represent us or anything like that. I live in Seanagan Lake. I've lived there for the past 15 years. I've used the trail. My kids use that trail. My grandkids use that trail. I, believe it or not, run down the railroad track there across the ties, and I grew up on the prairies with a lot of railroad tracks, and they're just spaced so they're too close to get hit every tie and too far to hit every second one. So it's a real chore to run down there. The main reason I think I'm here is because I also attended the meeting last night, and sorry to say that I think Sarah got put through the ringer a bit with most of the folks there being against the project, but I want to speak for it, and I think to wait and see what happens with the thing that's supposed to go on in February is the wrong idea. I think we should proceed with it now, and I'm just trying to figure out how the clock works here. So yeah, okay. So we just did phase 1, phase 2. I walk it quite regularly, talk to a lot of people there. Everybody's very happy with it. Everybody is in favor of further development. As far as all the pavement in the parking lots, I don't think there's any pavement or parking lot involved. As far as all the gravel that has to go into the lake, I'm not really sure about that, but that's something I'm willing to leave to the planning and engineering department at the CVRD. I did look at the conceptual plans on the internet there last night, and there's a whole bunch of pictures of where the trail's going to go, and it doesn't look, for the most part, that it's going to impact too much on any of the lake. There are some parts where some fill will have to be used. I guess I see more pluses to it than minuses, and the lady previous to me spoke to some of the pluses as well as Matt, and I think all of you agree that exercise, including the folks last night, everybody seems to think that building trails now is the right thing. It's just a case of whether it should be on the rail bed or on the side of it. CVRD has the money set aside now. We have the momentum with our advisory group and with Director Acton, who's done a great job of leading us. And I think the yes vote is the way to go. I'm not sure how everything works with the, Anyhow, we have the money and the momentum now, and if we don't do it, I don't think it's going to be the same price in the future. As you know, everything is going up, the cost of living is going up, and I just hate to see it set aside and not happen. So I urge you to vote yes for it. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Kowalik. So, thank you. No more speakers, Ms. Harrison?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no more speakers on the list, and our extended 15 minutes has elapsed. I'm not sure if there's anyone else in the gallery who wishes to speak. If that's the case, then we'd have to entertain another extension. We can only extend it for 15-minute increments, so.
At a time, yes. Okay, well, I'll wait a minute, but I'd just like to thank everyone. I know there's quite a few people watching today, but we have received lots and lots of emails, not only recently, but over the past several months. So rest assured, we have received your comments, even if you couldn't make it today. And thank you to all the residents who did make the effort to come today. Okay, so let's move on, please, Ms. Harrison, to the next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is delegations. There are none. The next item is correspondence, starting with item C1. Is a grant need for Electoral Area A, and the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that grant need request Electoral Area A, Mill Bay Malahat, in the amount of $1,000 be provided to the Mill Bay and District Conservation Society to support the operation of the Society's salmon conservation projects.
Okay, that's been moved. Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item C2 is grant need request for Electoral Area B. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant need Electoral Area B, Seanagan Lake, in the amount of $4,000 be provided to the Cowichan Community Workshop Co-op to support the purchase of woodworking tools for youth education.
Yeah, that's been moved. Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item C3, is grant need request for Electoral Area E. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area E, Cowichan Station, Satlam, Glenora, in the amount of $3,000 be provided to the Cowichan Community Workshop Co-op to support the purchase of woodworking tools for youth education.
Thank you. That's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is information. Under information, we have 5 items, which are minutes. First one, item 1 is Joint Electoral Areas A, B, and C Advisory Planning Commission minutes of April 7th, 2022. Item 2, Electoral Area F, Cowichan Lake South, Scotts Falls Advisory Planning Commission minutes of March 17th, 2022. Item 3, Electoral Area H, North-Oyster Diamond Advisory Planning Commission minutes of April 11th, 2022. Item 4 is Electoral Area E, Cowichan Station, Satlam, Glenora Community Parks Advisory Commission minutes of March 17th, 2022. And number 5 is Electoral Area G, Saltaire Gulf Islands Community Parks Advisory Commission minutes of March 22nd, 2022, and all those items are for information.
Okay, I see Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a note before these are posted in the Area E minutes, there were a
couple of items just for correction before they're posted. The acceptance of the agenda was moved and seconded, but no indication of, I'm sure it was carried. And the acceptance of minutes, just below that, was moved and seconded, but no notation as to carried or not. If those could be corrected before they're posted on the website, that would be the only corrections I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments, Director Martman?
Thank you, Chair. And yes, just that I'd like to have them signed by our chair before they're posted. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right, we'll move on then to the next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is reports. Item R1 is a report from the Development Services Division regarding Black Swan Inn, located at 2090 Seanagan Lake Road, PID 006-974-767. Liquor primary, structural change, capacity increase. There is a recommendation before you, and the applicant is in the lobby.
Okay, thank you. I see we have Ms. Davinia with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is an LCRB application in Area B for a structural change to increase capacity at the Black Swan Inn. The application is required for a change to the existing approved service area to expand the patio area to accommodate an additional 20 patrons for a total of 40 outdoors. The patio expansion was authorized originally by the Temporary Expanded Service Area, or TISA, authorizations to support the provincial health officers' orders under COVID. And the TISA was originally set to expire June 1st, 2022, which is what is mentioned in the staff report. However, the LCRB has recently extended the expiry date to March 31st, 2023. I just thought I'd point that out. The CBRD has the option to opt in or opt out to provide comments or recommendations to the LCRB, and staff have recommended opting out, and the recommendation is before you. And there are alternatives or additional information about if the CBRD chooses to opt in.
Okay, thank you very much. So questions for staff, Director Acton? Go ahead, Director Acton. Can you hear me?
Oh, I'm using the wrong one, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, old habits. I guess my question from staff is, did you reach out to the community around the Black Swan? I know that we have received complaints in the past, and I saw in the report that there hasn't been any lately, but despite that, have we reached out to them?
Thank you. So through the chair, no, staff have not reached out. Direction would need to be through resolution to do so.
Sorry. I have a follow-up? Thanks. I don't suspect that there's many other people to speak, so I would just like to let the committee know that I do have a recommendation. I think it would be just fair to the residents of that area to know what's going on here. And, you know, we're a small community, and I think it would just be in the best interest of the whole community just for them to have an opportunity. I do have a resolution that I can read out.
So,
I have
well,
worked with
Director
staff.
Acton, I'm just wondering, should we hear from the applicant, I believe, first? I believe we have the applicant with us. Is that right, Ms. Harrison?
Thank you,
There we
Mr.
go.
Chair. Yes, Mr. Mark Osmond is in the meeting.
Okay. Mr. Osmond, would you like to add anything or speak?
Yeah, I just heard what Sierra was saying about noise complaint was like a number of years ago now, and that was by a gentleman that bought my house behind the pub. We had live bands, which we don't have anymore. And we haven't had an issue with noise complaint for probably, I'd say, 3 to 5 years. As far as the patio and extension in question, it's what we had during COVID when we couldn't have indoor dining, and there was never an issue with that one neighbor with the people out there. So, I mean, I don't see it as an issue. I know that the neighbor by first name, and he knows he can call me anytime if there's an issue. All the other houses around there, we have a rental across the street. And I think Bicycleitis is another business. I don't think they've ever complained. So I'm not sure what else you need to know. But I mean, we went through all summer last year with the same patio and not a complaint.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Basically, three to 4 months of the year.
Right. Any questions for Mr. Osmond? Director Acton.
Well, sorry, it's not a question for the applicant, but just a question to staff. Would it really be, how much trouble would it be and how much time would it take just to reach out to residents that are in close proximity? I think once this has already gone forward and a local resident, asks, well, why didn't I get consulted? It's too late. So I think it would just be prudent on us to be able to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Davinia?
Thank you, Chair. So my understanding is it would be a public meeting, so that would involve organizing that, and how long that takes, I can't say. I've not done that yet. Perhaps the general manager can speak to it.
Ms. Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the board would have a couple of different options, actually, should you choose to opt in to collect comments. So you could either do an adjacent neighbor notification, similar to what we do with development variance permit applications, where we send a notice of the proposal and invite feedback within a certain period of time, and then we would bring those comments back to the committee, and then you could base your decision in part on that information. The other option would be, as Planner Davina has suggested, to direct that a public information meeting be held. And that would require a bit more organization. Obviously, if it's an electronic meeting, it's a little less organization than doing an in-person meeting. The challenge with that is that you might get comments from people who are not directly affected, and the legislation does require that nearby residents be the ones that whose views are considered. And so my recommendation, if you want to opt in and provide comments, would be to do a neighbor notification, similar to what we do with our development variance permit applications to persons within 100 meters or another metric that's reasonable distance from the pub.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Director Morrison and then back to Director Acton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm just seeking some clarification from staff, and I think Ms. Charles helped somewhat. So in the past, when these have come forward, we've essentially been had staff explain to us it's one or the other. We don't generally do a hybrid of sorts. And perhaps we could have staff who are knowledgeable as to the now it's now called the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch. They do engage in a process, is my understanding, and that's why in most occasions in the past we have chosen the option that was recommended, which was to defer to that branch's process for consideration of this. So is it not a fact that we either opt out or we opt in and we do a process? And if I could have staff clarify that. Thank you.
Who would like to take that? Ms. Davina?
Through the chair, I can take a crack at it. Yeah, so the LCRB has its own process, which would involve notice, but I'm not aware of how they go about doing it. So if this decision is to opt in, then we take that on. But if it's opt out, then they take that on. So I don't think there's an in between, but perhaps I can be corrected.
Okay, Mr. Osmond, would you like to comment?
Yeah, the last I had a change of hours, and the Liquor Control Board made me put up a sign for two weeks, 6x4 sign in front of the pub, asking for any public input or residents around the area if they had any views on us opening up early on a Sunday at 9 o'clock. And I had to put up for 2 weeks. So they do that by themselves. It's part of their regulation. So.
Okay, thank you. A follow-up, Director Morrison? You okay?
Well, I thought Ms. Trolf was going to jump in there for a second.
Okay. Ms. Trolf?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, just to kind of repeat what Planner Davina has said, it's that if the CVRD does not collect comments, then it is the obligation of the LCRB to do so.
Okay, I'll go to Director Yanni Nardo and then back to Director Acton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I also I would caution the committee to stay the course. The way we have currently been doing this is leaving it to the other organization to do that, and for the committee not to be opting in. So I think this is just not a good idea. So we should leave it to the organization that's doing it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Acton.
When I spoke to staff yesterday, my understanding was that if there was going to be any input from the neighboring residents, it would have to come from us. So if the Liquor Commission Board is going to do their own, then I'm fine. So could I have clarity from Ms. Trolf, please?
Okay, Ms. Trolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so if the board opts out, then it's the obligation of the LCRB to collect the views of residents, and they determine how they're going to do that. But it is their responsibility to do that.
Okay, Director Acton.
Thank you. I'd like to move the staff recommendation, please.
That's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd like to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll go to the next item, please. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item on the agenda is a report from the Development Services Division regarding Vignetta Zanata Limited Winery located at 5039 Marshall Road, PID 000-334-782 liquor license, manufacturer, new outdoor patio. There is a recommendation before you, and the applicant is not attending virtually. I'm not sure if they're in the gallery. Are they? No. Okay. The applicant is not present.
Okay, thank you. So back to you, Mr. Bina.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is another LCRB application, but this time in Area E, for a new outdoor patio at the Zanata Winery. The application is for the existing 163.3 square meter garden patio area that would be incorporated into the outdoor service area. So the lot is in the Agricultural Land Reserve and is subject to the ALC Act and regulations. Staff have identified that wineries and their ancillary use, including lounges, are considered a farm use. However, the outdoor service area exceeds the maximum for ancillary uses, which is 125 square meters. So the applicants are required to apply for a non-farm use application. And it's noted that the LCRB requires that manufacturers located in the ALR must meet the requirements of the ALC Act, and they leave that responsibility up to the applicants themselves. And so the applicant has informed staff that a non-farm use application has been submitted, which the CVRD has received, and the non-farm use application will be considered separately from the LCRB application at a later date. So today's application is about the LCRB application only for the new outdoor patio area, and staff have recommended to opt out once again.
Okay, thank you. So Director Nicholson.
I move the recommendation.
It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Mina, if you could take your screen down, I'll see if I can. There we go. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So we're getting almost, 2:25.
Mr. Chair, I think Director Nicholson is waving her hand at you.
Oh, sorry, Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I was just reflecting on these liquor applications, and I was wondering if it would be possible if I could make a motion to the effect that staff contact the LCB people and find out what we can expect as far as public consultation goes when we choose not to opt out, because I think that would be good information for us in making that decision and may help the community understand the process a little better.
Okay, Ms. Joseph's popped up. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Director Nicholson, staff would be happy to do that and provide you with that information as part of our Development Services Modernization Project.
Perfect. So no motion required on advisement. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So now 226, we have one more before. What's the feeling? Should we do one more before we take a break?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a point of interest that the applicants, there's two in the lobby for this one rezoning application. So you might.
Oh, good to know. Okay. Yeah, we'll go ahead then and have a look at this one then. Welcome, Miss Boyle. See your presentation. We don't see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My video is on.
Okay.
Can anyone else see me?
There we go. There you go. Yeah,
okay,
welcome.
So I'm presenting a development application RZ 21C01 for 3570 Telegraph Road. So this property is located in Cobble Hill off of the Trans-Canada Highway. Or east of the Trans-Canada Highway, sorry, immediately across from Arbutus Ridge. The property is about 2 hectares in size, is currently zoned RR2, Rural Residential 2 in the South Cowichan zoning bylaw, and has a designation of residential within the official community plan and rural residential within the local area plan. Maybe we can move to the next slide. So the property was historically used as a turkey farm, but for the past 15 years, the owner of the property has been offering 2 long-term rentals and 4 short-term rentals, in addition to using the property as a primary place of residence. So currently in the main house, the owner resides in the primary residence, and there are also 2 additional full dwelling units used for long-term rental, so 3 dwelling units total. The owner currently also operates 4 short-term rental units for temporary tourist accommodation. So 2 of these rentals are also located within the primary residence, and 2 are located within separate buildings. There are also several accessory buildings located on the property, so a shed, small shop, pergola, and covered RV structures. The current use of the property for single-family dwelling, 2 long-term rental suites with full kitchens and 4 short-term rental units for temporary vacation rentals does not comply with the zoning bylaw. So the applicant has applied to amend the zoning bylaw to create a site-specific zone that would allow for legalizing the current existing use on the property. So the staff have worked with Building Inspection Division and strategic initiatives to ensure compliance with the BC Building Code, as well as that the new zone would fit within the existing and proposed official community plan designations. So the new site-specific comprehensive development zone would permit the existing uses on the property, allow for a multi-family building with a maximum of 3 dwelling units used for long-term rental, as well as permit temporary tourist accommodation with a maximum of 4 tourist sleeping units, 2 within the main building and 2 in separate buildings. An amendment to the official community plan is required. The current use does exceed the residential use policies and objectives for the rural residential land use designation, and the use in the property is supported by the tourist commercial policies and objectives within the OCP. So the land use designation of tourist commercial would encompass the activities on the property without requiring any new policy language in the official community plan. So yeah, maybe next slide. And that's my recommendation that you see before you. but feel free to ask any clarifying questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. So any questions for Ms. Boyle before we turn to the applicants? Director Yanni DiNardo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. Boyle. With the new, we've had all kinds of letters written to us on this application. And with the new modernized OCP, would this property have changed its zoning anyway? Or would it remain the same?
Through Director Yanni DiNardo, through the chair to Director Yanni DiNardo. The modernized official community plan won't change the zoning. It'll change the land use designation. So it would still be a residential land use designation. I understand that it would be within the growth containment boundary, but the zoning would remain the same, and the MOCP still, policies wouldn't affect the number of dwelling units permitted within a single family dwelling. And as far as I understand, the MOCP wouldn't change the definition of bed and breakfast use in the zoning bylaw.
Thank you. I'll wait to hear from others. I've got other questions. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This one has been complicated and very complex right from the start, and it's something which it's very difficult to get. Even though I've been involved in it right from day one, it's very difficult to get to wrap your head around everything which is going on here. One of the things that concerns me the most is one of the speakers, one of the long-term renters, has mentioned that the possibility of renovation if this goes forward as it is right now, and that's something which I really can't allow to happen. What I would like to ask for here, and it's not a question, it's more a statement, is if we could possibly defer this report for another couple of weeks so that I have plenty of more time to speak with staff, get more information as much as I can so that we can find possibly another way forward if we can. The staff have done everything that they can on this, and I applaud the amount of work they've done. But Ms. Barton-Grieg has been placed in a situation which is kind of, unfair is not the right word. It's a very difficult situation, and I don't even know the right words for it. I particularly feel for Ben, her renter as well. So I'm just asking if we can defer this for a couple of weeks while I have some more talks. It's a very complex report. While I have some more consultations with the planning department and with Ms. Barton-Grieg, and if possible, I can put that forward as a motion if I have a seconder. Thank you.
Okay, that was a referral motion seconded by Director Nicholson. Any discussion on the referral? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, and thank you to the applicants for joining us. We'll have to see you next time. Thank you. All right, I think it's time we had a 10-minute break. Back at 2:44, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are live.
Thank you and welcome back, everyone. So let's turn to the next item on our agenda. Please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number RZ21F01, Cowichan Lake Road, PID 012490946. And the applicant, Janice Hiles, is in the lobby. I'll just admit her.
Okay, thank you. And welcome back, Mr. Bino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So application RZ21F01 is before you, proposes to rezone the subject property from the current split zoning of Parks 1 and urban residential to suburban residential, R2, to facilitate a proposed subdivision of 4 2+ hectare lots. So the lot is approximately 8.3 hectares and has an elongated shape, as you can see, with frontage on both Highway 18 at the top and then Cowichan Lake Road at the bottom. The staff report provides a history of the zoning of this lot. So really briefly, the P1 zone, Parks 1, was intended as a placeholder for future CVRD parkland. However, from experience, CVRD Parks is not interested in taking on parkland such as this, as it ends up being managed more for the benefit of the private landowners that are part of that lot and not as much for the general public. So it's currently zoned for public park use, but is a privately owned lot. So the application has been to the Area F APC twice now, first in August 2021, where the APC could not reach consensus, and there were concerns raised by members, and then a second time in March 2022, where the APC recommended approval. And those concerns included the designation, which has now been, the lot's been completely redesignated under the HOCP as residential. And then another concern was related to water. So there's concern about the water, just the groundwater use. So proof of water is a requirement of the subdivision approval process under the Works and Servicing Bylaw. So that would be addressed later on. And then as well, there was concern about the creeks that do cross the lot. So Josiah Creek, which is near the middle, and then 2 lesser creeks to the southeast. So staff have noted that a development permit would be required as part of a subdivision approval process for DPA 1, which is riparian protection, and could also be triggered later on for future land development. And then given the third concern was the close proximity to the highway, so noise and traffic, and staff have spoken to the proposed sizes of the lots and the buildable areas. So at a minimum, there would be a 45-meter setback from the highway at the top, Highway 18, and tree retention would also provide a buffer. So the applicant has indicated support in writing for possible community amenity contribution to register a new statutory right-of-way in favor of the CVRD to allow future installation of a groundwater monitoring well that would collect and interpret information in this area. This would support effective groundwater management and protection. And if you could please go to the next 2 slides. Yeah, sorry about that. So you can see the, do you mind going back 1 slide, please? Yeah, so I just wanted to point out there's the current zoning on the left there, and then the proposed subdivision on the right, which I've colored in just to reflect the 4 lots, the 2 yellow and the 2 green, just as an idea. And then please next slide, which is basically what I just said. Sorry about that. And then, sorry, the recommendation is on the next slide, and there's 4. And I'll just mute myself.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Bino? I see Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I am always wondering about the order of things now, because I think I've feel like I've been stung a few times on lot size and riparian protection and so forth. And I am wondering why we don't require a riparian assessment now to understand whether there are 4 lots with enough buildable site in it, because we actually don't approve the subdivision. That's the Ministry of Highways, I believe. So it seems to me that this is the time that we could maybe rejig things if there is going to be a problem down the road. Is that true or not?
Mr. Mina?
Thank you, Chair. Under the development permit areas, the requirement for a riparian assessment would be triggered at the time of subdivision application, or if they're building or doing land alteration within 30 meters of the riparian. So there's no, say, I hate to use that word, but trigger for a rezoning to require a riparian, like a development permit. But as noted in the staff report, under the development approval information bylaw, the CVRD could request biologist report to assess the lot and to anticipate maybe changing the proposed subdivision. So that is an option, and I believe it's in option 3 for recommendations.
Okay. Follow up, Director Nicholson, or?
Yeah, I just have to think a minute, Perma.
Okay.
Maybe move on to someone else.
Yeah. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll maybe take up some space while Director Nicholson considers her next question. This has some historical zoning, and this is some of the leftover from previous attempts to establish more density in that area. I know that the APC has contemplated the sort of highest best use for the lands that are between Highway 18 and Old Lake Cowichan Highway. And there's been a lot of different ideas floated, and I think that what we've got put before us is a residential use that is probably the most sympathetic to the fact that this is not only a fairly wet area, but there is also a substantial aquifer in the area that is very productive, very large, if I'm not mistaken. And so the interest in one of the amenities is possibly being a monitoring well, I think is something that is very important for long-term health of water resources in the area. And I know that there are it's essentially there's a lot of springs in the area, and that there's water that is coming to the surface even in the driest of times. So another comment that I would make is, and I know that our responsibility is to rezone lands and not necessarily take into account the nature of the applicants that are putting forward the application, but this is an applicant that is known to the regional district and known to staff, and I have a fairly high degree of confidence in the taking into consideration not only the comments that we bring forward today, but the comments of staff. So I'm hoping that this will ultimately be supported. I think one other comment about Director Nicholson's concern about what we can require and what we can't as part of the subdivision process. It's that same old question of we're not the subdivision approving authority, and whether or not we want to go down that road again or not, we have to some extent, cede that jurisdiction to the people that have responsibility for it. I don't have a huge concern that there will be impingement and vegetation alteration and removal in the area without the proper permits being in place. I think there's a track record of the applicants in other dealings we've had with them. So with that, I'll yield until there's any further questions, and I could consider moving a resolution when questions are done. Thank you.
Thank you. So Director Yanni DiNardo and then Director Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is, how is a monitoring well an amenity to us? Wouldn't this need, like, what is this needed by our staff? And isn't this a provincial authority? Like, I'm curious why a monitoring well would be connected to CVRD, and why would we want to own it if there is another agency that's responsible?
Serena? Oh, okay, Ms. Miller.
Okay. If I may, the CVRD, under its Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Program, has made a commitment to develop more discrete understanding and knowledge of the water resources for our communities, including water for the support of development. Under the strategy that the board approved, there was a line item that identified the need to better understand both aquifer resources as well as climate impacts to the region, rain and drought monitoring, etc. So we're in the final stages right now of developing a fully articulated strategy across the region. We've been developing the strategy in partnership with a variety of ministries and other agencies, because obviously we want to make sure that all of the decision makers, all of the agencies have access to the information as well as the public. And so one of the things that we're proposing under this development and some upcoming developments that are placed in areas where we need additional monitoring data, that we request of the applicant the ability to put in a monitoring well that would go into our joint network at some point in the future. And so this is an aquifer and in a particular location that is quite complex. And so we're suggesting that there be a right-of-way and support of the applicant to place a monitoring well for that aquifer as part of the development approval process.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Okay, I see. I'll put Director Wilson in next before Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have no idea how happy I was to hear that question asked and the answer that was given there. And I'm pleased to see that the CVRD is going to start a monitoring system, if I've understood that the answer correctly, because I'm sure you all know the problems I've had just with trying to get information and data on aquifer health and in my area here. So I'm kind of hoping that this watershed thing, and I'm sorry to go off topic a little bit as this is after all not in my area, but it does include all the aquifers throughout our areas. So therefore I would hope to see that this network would be extended to include everybody without me having to go to about 6 different agencies just to get the data that we so dearly need. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Miller. Sorry, you're on mute.
That helps if I hit that little button there. So to the director's comment, I will say that we have identified some areas and aquifers of immediate interest to us, and in the Cobble Hill area immediately adjacent to the director for Area C, we have already requested an opportunity and a right-of-way on some current developments. So it will be happening throughout the area. We're currently negotiating with others, and we anticipate bringing the full strategy to the board sometime in the next 2 months. We've been waiting for our RT manager to make sure that the strategy we're building fits within the CVRD IT framework as well as that of the province.
That's great. Follow up, please, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's terrific news. Thank you very much for that. And I'm kind of hoping that that would include the 4 test wells that the CVRD owns as well. Is that correct?
Ms. Miller.
Without going into too much detail, wells are developed for a variety of purposes. And so when we're looking at, say, for example, aquifer water quality, it's different necessarily than an aquifer that may be identified for volumetric monitoring. So we're looking at putting telemetry into CVRD utility wells, wells across the region, and priority aquifers, snow pillows, climate monitoring stations, etc. So they will be distributed, and we'll bring the full strategy to the board shortly.
Okay, thank you. So just before I go back to Director Nicholson, who might have a motion, Ms. Harrison, did you say the applicant is in the room?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, the applicant is in the meeting.
Okay, maybe we should.
Janice Hiles.
Ms. Hiles, would she like to comment at all before we go back to Director Nicholson?
I see her listed as Janice. Her screen is off.
Okay.
Maybe
All right,
she's stepped away.
Right. We'll go ahead, Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I really like option 3. I think that we have to be more careful, particularly when we're dealing with these wet ecosystems, that we do it right. And this at the rezoning stage is where we can actually have some effect, I think. And what the option allows us to inform, by doing a riparian assessment, to inform the conditions of a bylaw amendment to avoid ecosystem impacts. And so it seems to me that that would be the conservative approach to this one. And I would definitely like to move that, but I'm not going to upstage the area director for this area, because I think he may have his own ideas on it. But that's my position on the environment side. I have another question though, which is pertaining to the corridor, the corridor along Highway 18. And I know my community has frequently, including the APC, has frequently talked about the need for a visual corridor along there to protect the green space. And I am wondering if this will be protected. It's not clear to me from listening to the presentation or reading the material that there actually a buffer will be required and maintained in the long term.
Okay, who would like to take that? Mr. Bilo?
So, yeah, it's not discussed, sorry, through the chair, it's not discussed in the staff report, but the applicant has expressed interest in, having some sort of buffering there, whether it's through the bylaw, the drafted bylaw. They're not as supportive for, I think, a covenant. But yeah, that's an option to include in the draft bylaw if it proceeds to that.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, follow up.
So just to be clear, so we're not requiring a covenant for a buffer along there currently?
Through the chair to Director Nicholson, no, not at this time, but that is an option. Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Cheroff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the committee's benefit, there's a couple of options in terms of the landscape buffer. So that could be achieved through the requirement for a restrictive covenant to maintain a landscape buffer in perpetuity. Another option would be to include provisions within the zoning bylaws themselves to require a landscape buffer. There's significantly more ability to manage the maintenance side of a buffer through a covenant. That's the distinction, but it is possible to do it through the zoning bylaw as well. But staff would be seeking. Can you hear me okay? I'm sorry.
Sorry, there was a bit of feedback, but yeah, we could hear most of that.
Okay, so staff would be seeking the committee's direction if there's interest in making that a requirement.
Okay, maybe I just saw the applicant pop up there. Maybe we should Janice, are you with us? Would you like to make any comments at this point?
Besides having screaming grandchildren in my background, we have talked about the issue of buffering before, and it was brought forward that the rest of the corridor is not buffered. And it was brought forward that if anything should be done, it should be done with all of the Lake Cowichan properties along the side, and it has not been done with that. So this would create a individual zoning only on that piece of property. I don't know what the value of it would be, as well as I know that before that it was talked about that the elk are an issue, and when the vegetation, when you can't alter the vegetation, that is a concern for the highways department with how much vegetation they would like at the sides of the roads as well, for how many elk and how it's visible. So I think it's kind of a bigger question than it just appears to be.
Okay, thank you. So I saw Director Yanni DiNardo. Was that a question for staff or the applicant, or?
Well, actually, I was just going to reiterate what Ms. Hiles just said, because I do believe that we heard from Ministry of Transportation, at least I was very clear on that the elk along the highway corridor and the dangers that they are causing to traffic, they needed to have it clearer than it has been in the years past. So buffers were great, but apparently not so great, unfortunately, for people that have hit elk. So that's what I remember. I don't know if there was more information on that.
Okay, thank you. So any other questions before I turn to the director for the area? Or Janice, did you have any further comments before we move on?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, go ahead, Director Morrison.
I actually do have a question for staff, and that's the just the piece that Director Nicholson has brought up in regards to environmental impact assessment. And I understand the rationale in that they're these are somewhat damp areas on these properties, and we want to ensure that any riparian areas are protected and vegetation and degradation doesn't happen. But I guess through to perhaps Ms. Chirolf, I could see having that tool available to us if we were to have some sort of environmental assessment done. But to what extent, and is there a way that we could, have this move forward concurrently? I don't know what the timeline is for a public hearing at this point, but I think it might be reasonable if there's an expectation that one will ultimately have to be done, that it happened concurrently with our processes, and that we don't order it and then have to come back in 4 to 6 or 8 weeks and then have it move forward. So can Ms. Chirolf give us any advice or direction on how this might be accomplished?
Ms. Chirolf.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So as Planner Dabina noted, through the Development Approval Information Bylaw, the board can request certain studies be completed in conjunction with a rezoning application. And I would suggest that if you feel that information would be beneficial, that you pass a recommendation to that effect. That's in the staff report. So that would inform the process going forward. I don't believe have a date sort of pinpointed for a public hearing, and it would obviously be contingent on the information that we would be bringing forward to the public hearing. But certainly if there's an interest in having an environmental assessment report completed, we want to see that completed and made available prior to the public hearing, so the public has the benefit of reviewing that information as well.
Okay, follow up.
Yeah, and agreed. And I guess my question is also too, is there a significant enough difference in an environmental impact assessment and what we would require in the form of a development permit to protect riparian areas. Because, you know, we add time, but we also add cost to the development of these lots, which ultimately end up being passed on to the people that are looking to buy them. I know that these aren't likely to be in the affordable housing basket, but still, it's something to consider. Do we know if there's going to be a significant improvement in the quality of information if we did order an environmental assessment versus what would be provided in our development permit process?
Mr.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Director Morrison. So the environmental impact assessment, as it's described in the Development Approval Information Bylaw, that's Bylaw 3540, which is on the CBRD website, does outline the criteria that would be looked at in terms of an environmental assessment report. It would be significantly more comprehensive than what you would get through a standard riparian areas protection regulation report, which could be prepared by a QEP. We would be looking to, I believe, registered professional biologists and potentially other professionals if there's information that's needed around water. So you would be looking at a significantly more comprehensive report coming forward than one you would get in conjunction with a development permit application, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. So,
I'd like to test the House. I'd like to move option 1.
Do we have a seconder?
Point of clarification.
Go ahead, Director.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. As I thought that Director Nicholson moved option 3 and Director Morrison seconded it.
No,
Okay. That's what I thought I saw on the screen. Okay, right. So we are now voting on option 1?
Well, yeah, Director Morrison just moved to option 1. And it's been seconded, so we can discuss it now. Any discussion? Director Nicholson.
I'd just like to point out that even the APC had concerns about the environmental issues, and I really think it would be prudent to follow the precautionary principle and get better information before we make a decision. And I am certainly not, I have no problem with this rezoning to residential. From my perspective, it's really about lot size and where the, you know, how it can actually happen in a sensitive way. Thank you.
Okay. Are there other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll call, was that you, Director Kuhn? No? Okay. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? 3 opposed. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to the next item. Please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is item R5. It's a report from the Parks and Trails Division regarding the Seanagan Village Rail Trail Phase 3. And I have the applicants in the lobby. I'll just admit Justin Lang and John Irving.
Okay, thank you. And I see we have Mr. Farquhar. Do we have a presentation on this one from staff?
Mr. Chair, there is no presentation. There's quite a lot of information attached to the staff report done by Megan Walker, inclusive of her summary report, detailing out the Phase 3 rail with trail in Seanagan Village. We have Justin Lang here from Madrone to answer any questions with respect to the environmental side of all the assessment work done. I'm not sure if we still have Mr. John Irving from McElhaney Engineering is with us. Unfortunately, he had other commitments mid-afternoon. But the report before you summarizes the work that was done to further assess options of aligning a rail with trail on either the east or west side of the tracks between Seanagan Wharf Park and Old Mill Park. This was further to the direction of the board back in 2018 when the initial Seanagan Lake Rail Trail initiative was given the green light to proceed on phases 1 and 2, which have been completed between Seanagan Wharf Park and Mason's Beach Park in the village area. So the additional work done was to further assess both from engineering design, a cost feasibility, and environmental impact and mitigation perspective, alignment of a rail with trail on either the west side or the lake side of the tracks and on the east side of the tracks. And as you'll note in the staff report before you, a summary is provided of a number of the key elements that were assessed and the implications of everything from the cost and feasibility to the amounts of excavation and or grading required to environmental impact and mitigation work that would need to be done for either the west side or the east side, as well as the projected cost implications of either. Based on all of that work done by the consultant teams over the past 2 years, the recommendation being brought before the committee and the board is that the project be given approval to proceed on the west side or the lake side of the tracks, based on all the assessment and feasibility work done, understanding the cost implications, the environmental impact and mitigation implications, and overall efforts to construct. The other option that I think some have been floating out there in the community is consideration of removing the tracks and building the trail on the tracks themselves. This is not an option available to the Cowichan Valley Regional District. I was in communication yesterday with Island Corridor Foundation's CAO. He has advised and reaffirmed that removal of the tracks along any portion of the Island Corridor Foundation's corridor is not an option at this time, and not an option in the foreseeable future. It is an active rail corridor and remains so. He certainly has extended that if the interest of the CBRD board, that the Island Corridor Foundation would be pleased to come and present an update on the corridor to the board at the board's discretion for having the CAO show up and make that presentation. But in terms of the agreement the CBRD has with Island Corridor Foundation, as well as the other regional districts' agreements for rail with trail, the option of removal of tracks and building a trail where the tracks are is not an option. So similar to what Capital Regional District has done in terms of building within the corridor on either side, and similarly with other regional districts and like the city of Nanaimo, the project, similar to what we've done up in Chemainus, done up in Saltaire, building a rail with trail is allowed under our agreement with the Island Corridor Foundation. And based on all the work done by the consultants, the report before the committee today is the recommendation derived from all of their work. So, Mr. Chair, if there are particular questions from the committee specific to, in particular, the environmental assessment work done by Madrone, we have Mr. Lang here who can certainly answer any questions. As staff, we're also available for any questions the committee may have at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and welcome, Mr. Lang. And I had Director Yanni Donardo first.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I will wait until I don't know what's going on with the
got feedback somehow.
Are we okay now? Okay.
Director Morrison's mic is on.
Okay, I just wanted to, I'll wait for other speakers because I don't have a question because I think that the report is self-explanatory and it has been on our agenda for a long time. So I'll wait for I don't have questions currently, but I am in favor of the staff's recommendations and I'll speak to it if it's going to be moved and seconded.
Okay, thank you. So any questions? Welcome, Mr. Dias. Any questions? Wow. Okay. Director Nicholson, and then Director Acton.
Well, this is a really difficult one for me because well, first of all, let me say I super appreciate all the community who care so much about this project, and I am fully supportive of trails. I think trails are a really good thing. And when we first started to get people providing their input, taking the time to write their input, which I really appreciate. I went for a walk along this section of the trail to Mill Park. And I am a biologist in my former days. I was trained as a biologist. And I honestly thought, how could they, it's just, no, what I thought was, it's such a shame that they were so, they put the rail right beside the lake the way they did. They made a lot of really bad mistakes in development in the past, and we are paying the price today. And then I looked at the riparian side, the west side of the tracks, and there is a section that is quite long that is basically in the riparian area. The whole, I mean, if they hadn't filled it, it would be riparian. And it just is such a shame for the lake, the health of the lake. And we work so hard on the riparian along the shoreline to encourage people to do the right thing. And here we are proposing to fill. And so I guess my question, first of all, is did we even consider a boardwalk?
Okay, who'd like to take that? Mr. Farquhar.
I can take that one. At this point in time, an elevated boardwalk was not factored into the option of providing access along the lake. It was looked at from the perspective of a continuation of the gravel trail that currently is in place in phases 1 and 2.
Okay. Follow up.
Well, I mean, I honestly have to say that I cannot support putting fill in the riparian area, destroying more riparian area along that lake, which is really super stressed as it is with all the development. I just cannot support that. And it's just a straight environmental question to me.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Farquhar.
Perhaps if Mr. Lang could speak to the riparian area. And as you noted in the report, for the west side, the engineering consultants did note that minor excavation and fill is needed in some areas. It's not filling in the lake. So, Mr. Lang, are you able to comment based on the work that you did there, what that would likely entail?
Go ahead, Mr. Lang.
Yeah, thank you. So, based on the plans that I'm aware of, either side would be considered in the riparian zone, so to speak, but the west side is the, I'm going to say, least of two evils, in that there will be less excavation required. And I think a minor amount of fill will need to be brought in, but at the same time, there is potential, maybe we can even get a net benefit out of this, because I noted that along the corridor there's extensive invasive plant growth. So there is potential for maybe we can get a net benefit through replanting with native species, and we regain some of that functionality again.
Okay, thank you. So I do have a list, Acton, Wilson, and Morrison. Director Acton, do you like to?
Sure.
Oh, and Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was actually pleasantly surprised with the environmental reports. That was just very detailed, and I learned a lot, actually. I felt like these were more detailed than we're used to. Learned a lot reading about the mitigation measures, and it was really helpful to have a good understanding of how the trail would be constructed. So having all those reports, I really appreciate that. There was a recommendation from Mr. Dave Monday, who is a retired environmental professional, and his recommendation was that we follow the RAR regulations. So I would assume that that's what we are doing. And I I did hear some comments from community last night that CVRD is not following their own rules. So I'm just wondering how the CVRD would respond when someone says something like that.
Okay, Mr. Lang, would you? No, you're not CVRD, but I saw you showing some interest.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So in a case such as this, we actually go above and beyond the riparian area protection regulation. In this case, for the trail to even be approved, we would have to go through, because it's so close to the lake, we would have to go through the Section 11 process with the Water Sustainability Act, and it would have to go through a project review with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. To date, those haven't been submitted yet because the plans are not finalized. But even if the trail was to go on the east side, it would be considered within the riparian zone, which the RAR, or now RAPR, it doesn't allow for that development. So that's why we bypass and go to these more in-depth project approvals.
Okay. Well, Director Acton, are you okay for now? Okay, I'll go to Director Wilson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a toughie, isn't it, eh? First of all, there's something I forgot to say previously, and it's so nice to see everybody back here again, because I had a very, very pleasant conversation, which we've been missed since we've been on the small screen. So let's hope we can continue that way as we go forward. Director Nicholson has brought up one of the concerns that I have as well, which is the proximity of the trail to the lakeside, and it has been answered a couple of times there. I know, but I still have concerns about that. I didn't know anything about riparian areas. I didn't even know what a riparian area was until 2 years ago, but I've learned a huge amount of it, and the less disturbance we can give to those areas, the better. Even if that disturbance is minimal, we have to look at what effect it might have. I am torn on this one, very torn. There's lots of pros and there's lots of cons. But one of the other concerns that I have is the concerns that the owners have brought up about the crossing their land. And I'll leave that for the time being. But my main concern is this riparian area and the proximity of this of the pathways too, and I am in full favour of trails. Don't get me wrong. I'd like to see many, many more. This one I'm not. I just don't know about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Director Morrison and then Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks staff for having our consultant here, and also to want to echo what Director Wilson has said. It's so nice to have folks in the gallery here. And I first want to acknowledge that, we as directors have had to do an awful lot of reading in the last few days over the weekend and the likes, and it's been right up until the meeting started with all the emails that have been submitted for our consideration. And just from a process perspective, we all are required, not only today, but up until next week, to keep an open mind on our decision-making process. And one of the things that I think is, I do want to acknowledge and note the passion that has been brought to us in this meeting and in the emails, and it's important to note that, and I thank everyone who's taken the time to write and share what their thoughts and concerns are. I want to go to a little bit to this riparian work and the things that are going to be done there if this is approved. And I've got a little experience with this in that the Cowichan Lake has maybe not quite as much development as Seanagan does, but there have been some of those ill-advised developments and building along the lake shore, and not a lot, but in the past 8 or 10 years, a group called the Cowichan Lake and River Stewards have worked with the environmental groups to do the Cowichan Shoreline Stewardship Project, and that's where people are actually going into the riparian zone under the guidance of environmental professionals and are actually doing that rehabilitation work. And I know that Director Wilson has found that, his experience has been to leave things alone, and that's the best course of action. Well, I could tell you that the work that was done around the Cowichan Lake and the Cowichan River by this group, who are actually going in and removing invasives and going into that very important area, the riparian area, and doing that rehabilitation work. The net benefit is that you've got healthier shoreline, healthier riparian habitat. And, given that these were volunteers, community members that were doing this work under the supervision of some folks that are fairly well known in the community. We've got Dave Polster and others that supervise that kind of work. A hugely successful program. And I look to the fact that we've got Mr. Lang here, we've got Mr. Farquhar, Mr. Dias. We have a pretty darn good track record with both the federal and provincial jurisdictions for when we do work in and about a stream or a lake. And so given the fact that I think we've done pretty well, we have a pretty decent track record, I get a certain amount of comfort from the fact that we've brought to bear some pretty, impressive information and scientific and ecological background to this. And when I hear Mr. Lang say that, we could end up in a net benefit situation, that provides me with a certain amount of comfort. And just one last thing in regards to what Mr. Farquhar had shared. I was in attendance at a meeting in Victoria with the Island Corridor Foundation owners, and that would be the regional districts and nations up and down the corridor. And I didn't have a sense at all coming out of that meeting that there was an abandonment of rail traffic on Vancouver Island. As a matter of fact, I got the sense that even though there are some issues and some legal cases being considered, that looking to the future and looking at transportation needs as they will develop on this island, that this is something that will become a key part of our infrastructure so that we can get cars and we can get transport and we can get goods moving on that corridor as opposed to up and down the island on the Malahat number one. So, there's a lot to unpack in that, but looking at the grand scheme of things and looking at the input that has been provided to this point, I see a lot of community benefit and a lot of community support in this project moving forward. And I look forward to hearing from the rest of my colleagues around the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Morrison. Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you. I won't repeat, but I appreciate what Director Morrison has spoken about. And I do value what our staff has been working on in the past and how much we all have learned, especially those of us who have been here for a very long time and those of us that have coastlines and a lot of riparian area. And I see this as a win-win. I also see this as I think we heard the Parks Chair in attendance today that this has been on the Parks and Trails Master Plan. And I think that this also leads into not only the environmental health, which I think they've done a good job and will likely even improve because the railway is there already. I have walked it as well, and I see a lot of different things going on, and we've toured Seanagan Lake and the foreshore. This is definitely going to be an improvement to a lot of stuff that we witnessed this summer on the tour. And I would just like to say that I think this is of great benefit to the community and will continue with their walking trails that need to happen for mental health as well. So I think this is a project that is a long time coming and will be well looked after. Thank you.
Thank you. So Director Nicholson and then Acton.
Thank you. I think I would like to address my comments here to Mr. Lang and Casey. I'd like to add some further information. So when I walked along the railway tracks, I agree with you completely. The area is a mess. ecologically. There are lots of invasive species, but putting the trail on the west side means that, from my perspective, means that we will be removing some of the better native portions of the riparian area, in terms of some trees, and then along the real wetland area with the shrubs that are between the tracks and the lake, where the high water mark comes up. So I guess what I'm hearing that you're proposing is that there may be a net benefit by removing the rest of the native stuff that's of any value and redoing it all. But yet I don't see that we'll be doing any work on the east side of the track, where a lot of the mess is, in terms of invasive species. So I actually think it's a sort of a high risk proposition, and I don't really understand your recommendations. It's almost, when I read the report, it was almost like it was a trade-off between the west or the east, not whether it should be done at all.
Mr. Lang, would you like to comment? Sorry, you're on mute, Mr. Lang. Still on mute, sorry. I'm sorry, you're still muted. This always happens. Any techie suggestions, anyone? No, okay, he's trying again.
Mr. Chair, should we take 5 minutes maybe?
Yeah, let's do that. Actually, it's time anyway, isn't it? Why don't we come back at 3:45? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are live.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Mr. Lang, how are you sounding now?
Can you all hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thanks. Sorry for getting booted out there.
No worries.
So I can do my best to answer that question before I got booted out there. Yeah, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, no matter how you look at it, I guess. I look at it from also a net benefit as well, because a lot of those areas along that western side of the corridor are lawn and historically disturbed. So I think it might actually present more opportunity to gain more functional habitat. I mean, yeah, unfortunately, a small amount of native vegetation would get removed during the initial phases of construction. I mean, there's no getting around that. But I think if we look long term, it may create more habitat over time. So that's kind of where my reasoning is coming in there.
Okay, thank you, Director Morris, or Director Nicholson. Follow up.
So I think I'm really focused. I think it's the section 4. Is that straight section where it's right beside the willows in hardhack? Is that that section? So I'm wondering, did you consider like a boardwalk type of construction through there? Would that be helpful at all?
Okay, Mr. Lang.
I haven't thought about a boardwalk. it's my understanding that the planning phase is still kind of ongoing. You know, if a boardwalk was an option, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it. But as Mr. Farquhar said, I don't think that's been looked at. So for me, it was just kind of to try and come up with plans based on the information that I had available at the time.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, one more follow-up, Dr. Nicholson.
Well, I think this speaks to this process that we have not been presented with a very detailed plan. And so I am wondering if if we approve this to go ahead, will it just go ahead without us, or will there be a detailed plan that comes back for consideration? Because I mean, this is a super sensitive area, and I think we really need to have good information before we make final decisions about things. And I don't necessarily feel we have that here.
Okay, Mr. Farquhar? On the question of a detailed plan?
Mr. Chair, the report before you is looking for direction on the project. So typically, when projects are approved by the board, they move into an operational phase, which is the details of design, tendering, and construction.
Okay. Thank you, Subdirector Acton, and then Kuhn.
Oh, I'll let Director Kuhn speak since he hasn't spoken yet.
Okay, thank you.
I think this is the kind of project that will never please everybody. No matter which decision we're going to come up with, there are going to be people that will be upset about it and that will not like what is going to be decided. I have a lot of trust in our Parks Department. I think they've done an excellent job in the past, and I know how they handle riparian areas. I've watched them in my area on Cowichan Lake. There's been a lot of time spent on this project. A lot of discussions have been had. We've received an awful lot of emails. And I think we're ready for decision time, and I'm willing to move to option number 1. Thank you.
Okay, I think, were you seconding that, Director Acton? Okay, and would you like to comment now, or I also have Director Wilson?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to speak.
Okay.
And to Director Kuhn's point of not pleasing everyone, I do appreciate all the input that we've received over the years even. But, you know, I can't look at this with just one lens. As far as there's 3 lenses that I look at this project with: environmental, economic, and social. So for the environmental one, you know, I'm not an environmental professional. We lean on the environmental professionals to do that. I see the most extensive environmental report almost that we've probably had at this table. 5 reports summarized by a third party. So I'm gonna, with that lens, I feel very confident, and I don't take it lightly. I was one of those people that was protesting for the health of the lake, and of course it is a great concern for me. I gave up almost 2 years of my life doing that. So the next lens I also look at, though, is economic, and we have support letters from local businesses. Under that, I also look at it's fully funded. We're choosing the most economical option, and it's going to create more economic opportunity. And you know, my slogan has always been "Love it, share it, protect it," and I think the share it part is welcoming people to our community and providing the amenities that they require in order to enjoy it. We have further plans of, last night I also heard people asking for washrooms and more porta potties. So we have plans for that in place as well. And then the third lens I look at this with is social. And we heard it many times. And as area directors, the biggest thing we hear is the safety of our roads. And that is always the biggest. You can't ride your bike, you can't walk on the side of the shoulder, never mind allow kids to venture out on their own. This is going to give a huge opportunity to thousands of people, including people in the village, where even if you live in the village containment boundary in an electoral area, it's not safe to walk on the roads, and it's not safe to ride your bike. We have support letters from St. John's Academy, and they talk about the safety, and Seanagan Lake School. These, we sit around this table, and for me, this is actually a very serious concern. I just could not live with myself if I didn't have the courage to actually go with what the whole community wants. And if something happened to somebody because, there wasn't this opportunity to have a trail and get around in our village safely and to allow kids to ride their bike. For my kids to ride a bike, I used to have to drive them somewhere. So I think this is an amazing opportunity. And with that, also, I would respectfully disagree with the comment about, it's a shame that it was developed like this. It's actually a win for community that a train line went through here at some point, because otherwise we would not have the opportunity to have a walking trail and to the proximity to the lake. That is the second thing that is the most important thing to our community, is access to the lake, being able to see it, viewscapes. The lake is our heart of our community, and it's important to everyone, and it's shared with everyone, and it gives that opportunity. And I'm really confident that there's the people who live along the trail. There's actually some who are in support of this trail, but those who are against it, I'm pretty confident that they will learn to appreciate it and realize that it's actually an amenity to them as well as the whole community. So I'm happy with the recommendation, and I urge my fellow directors to look at the whole project with that lens and to support the future of Seanagan Lake as a connected community that can walk and bike and enjoy each other and the lake. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Director Acton. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things that I'm so glad I'm not in Director Acton's shoes right now, because it's a tough situation to be in. One of the things that Director Acton did touch on was the economic part, and that was something that I was going to touch on as well. And I'm reading the financial considerations here again, and it says here, 592,000 for the Western, not including construction design, implementation phase, permitting and testing fees. No detailed design has been completed at this time. And this is a bit that bothers me a little bit. So this information could vary significantly, and large contingencies are included. However, it appears that. So what's the cost going to be? If we don't know what the costs are at the moment, there are large variations here that could happen. And secondly, who actually pays for this? Will we be borrowing money to pay for it, or will it come out of Director Acton's area or regional or whichever? Could I have some clarity on that, please?
Thank you. Who's raising their hand? Mr. Farquhar.
Mr. Chair, I'll speak to the second part, and then I'll turn to Mr. Dias for the first part. So for the second part, this is Electoral Area B, Community Parks Function 232 project. There is $650,000 approved in the 2022 budget through gas tax funding to fund this project. Any additional costs associated with the project would have to be derived through the Area B Community Parks function. And as to the construction costs themselves and the design costs, Mr. Dias, if you can provide any additional information there at this time, that would be appreciated.
Mr. Dias.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Director Wilson. In the correspondence from McElhaney, we have a cost estimate, a Class D cost estimate, which is plus or minus 50%. However, there is a 30% contingency built into that estimate, and that estimate is recent. We had him update that about a month ago, so we could reflect what's going on in the current economy. And so that, based on the level of information that they went out and gathered, detailed survey topographical information, they were able to estimate with a degree of clarity quantities of culverts, lineal meters of vegetation removal, quantities of gravel, and so typically our experience is that these cost estimates don't go too crazy. Engineers are a pretty conservative bunch, and so past history has told us that when we get a Class D cost estimate, it doesn't tend to change too much. Now, the world is doing some crazy things right now, but we can't control that either. So we would work within budget. We need to spend a few more dollars on design, final detailed design, and that will allow us to probably produce a Class A cost estimate, which is plus or minus 20%.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Falcar.
Okay, thank you. So next I have Directors Morrison and then Martman.
Mr. Chair, I'd yield to Director Martman. I was going to ask that the question be called, but we haven't heard from Director Martman yet.
Yeah, go ahead, Director Martman.
Thank you, Chair. And I do have a question, but just a comment. As a director with a potential trail being built in our area, it's certainly something that's very important to the community. And nothing's solved overnight, and certainly problems will arise in every project. I do have confidence in the CVRD that they will follow each step, and if something comes up that just will halt things, then they will take that halt if necessary. I also very aware from my community around the limitations around gas tax, and just a clarification with the CVRD around the timelines that are imposed by gas tax. Maybe you can speak briefly about the monies for this trail in particular.
Thank you. Who would like to take that one? Mr. Farquhar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so the project approved by the board in this year's budget, as I mentioned earlier, is funded through gas tax funding. We've identified in the project timeline that this project would be undertaken through 2022-2023. So would be within the time frame that the gas tax funding is available for the project.
Okay. Good. Okay, any last comments? No? Okay, Director Nicholson.
Well, I'm sorry to keep bringing this up, but I am wondering if there is an opportunity as they go forward to develop an A plan. If you could look at, if it's possible to look at putting in a boardwalk through the most sensitive areas.
Mr. Farquhar.
Mr. Chair, we can certainly take that as a direction for the consultants moving forward the project upon approval by the board to look at that as a potential option.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Ask the question be called.
Oh, I just see Director Atkin first.
So just for clarity, that's just, staff's just going to keep it as an option, or because I think that would be, could have some unintended consequences with like railings and all kinds of things. So anyway, I'll just vote on the question.
Mr. Farquhar.
We'll pass those back through to the consultant design team if the project is approved by the board to move forward for consideration, understanding all the variables that will be attached to that. So it's, I'm not sitting here saying that with absolute boardwalk could be factored into the project, but through the interest of the committee, if we can look at little sections if it's viable and appropriate, that boardwalk can be factored in and have additional value benefit to the overall rail trail. We could certainly have the consultants look at that as part of the project. But currently, as outlined by the feasibility assessment, it is a gravel trail similar to what's in place already through phases 1 and 2 between Seanagan Wharf Park and Mason's Beach Park.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. All right, so on this, I'd like to call the question. This is on the recommendation in favor of the rail trail. All in favor? Opposed? One opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And this will go to the board on April 27th. And thank you to the community for all the interest. And the next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item on the agenda is R6. It's a report from the Planning Strategic Initiatives Division regarding bylaw number 4424, Electoral Areas Official Community Plan, DPA amendment. And there is a 4-part recommendation before you.
Okay, thank you, and welcome, Ms. Garnett.
Thank you very much. I have a presentation if that would be helpful.
Yes, that would be good. Thank you.
Excellent. Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Great. So as was said, this is an amendment bylaw number 4424. It's an amendment to the Electoral Areas Official Community Plan, the harmonized OCP. It's intended to amend the development permit areas. It's brought to you by Planning Strategic Initiatives and GIS divisions. So bylaw 4424 proposes to amend the harmonized OCP bylaw 4270 and specifically the development permit area schedules. The bylaw includes components to harmonize and take steps to modernize that are procedurally necessary now. There's sort of two broad categories of amendments being proposed. The first is exemption alignment, and the second is mapping refinements. So I'll give some examples of the exemption alignments. The first here applies to Development Permit Area 2, which is sensitive ecosystems, and it's an attempt to harmonize the exemptions. What's proposed is to add the exemptions that are currently applicable only in Area D to all of the electoral areas. There are currently no exemptions for this development permit area in the other electoral areas. The specific exemptions are to permit a dwelling or accessory building less than 10 square meters, a retaining wall less than 10 meters in length and 1 meter in height, construction of non-structural impervious surfaces such as driveway, walkway, patio, less than 10 square meters. And in addition, we're proposing to add the requirement for a letter from a registered professional biologist to confirm that there are no sensitive ecosystems located in the area of the subject property based on field verification. The second example that I'll speak to applies to the Development Permit Area 1, riparian protection. We're proposing to delete the exemption for accessory buildings in the riparian assessment area. And the rationale is that structures in the riparian area are inconsistent with the objectives of the development permit area. And attachment A to the staff report is an explanation of all the proposed changes in bylaw 4424. So now for the second category of proposed amendments, I will pass it over to Andrea Cross.
Great. Welcome, Ms. Cross.
Thank you. So there were three basic mapping changes that are introduced by bylaw 4424. The first is that the data in DPA 4, the aquifer protection, was updated to groundwater aquifers data, which was downloaded from the province. The second is that lands that had been transferred to Cowichan tribes have been removed from DPAs. And third, the symbology of the DPAs was improved to allow for the overlap of all DPAs when looking at a subject parcel. So the symbology colors remain the same to correspond with the DPA wayfinding color keys that are found in Schedule C, the development permit areas. And if we go to the next slide, we'll just have a reminder of what those were. This is from page 11 of Schedule C. And these colors are meant to provide continuity between the text and the maps. So these colors appear throughout the text in Schedule C when talking about each DPA, and the corresponding color is used to symbolize the DPAs in Schedule U, the development permit area maps. Next slide, please. So here we see an example or comparison of map UDPA 4.1, aquifer protection for area H. And just to review the map naming, we have U at the beginning of the map name indicates that it is part of Schedule U for the development permit area maps. DPA 4 indicates that it's the Aquifer Protection DPA, and the 0.1 indicates it's the second or the first map in the series for DPA 4, and in this case we're looking at electoral area H. So the map on the left shows the aquifer protection data as it was defined by the old Area H OCP bylaw, number 1497. And on the right, we see the new provincial groundwater aquifer data, which you can see covers a larger area of land from the old data. And here we also see the difference in symbolism, where the solid color on the left has been replaced by an outline filled with dots, which will allow other DPAs to be seen simultaneously with this data when they're overlaid. The color of the outline remains the same purple as the wayfinding color found in Schedule C. And this last example shows a portion of the map of UDPA 3.2, where again, U means it's from Schedule U, and DPA 3 indicates it's the Marine Uplands and Foreshore Protection DPA. The 0.2 indicates it's the second map in this DPA, and in this case, we're looking at areas C and D. The close-up here shows Cowichan Bay, and the area in the red circle shows the lands that were transferred to the Cowichan tribes in 2020. And the symbolism has slightly changed here. The Cowichan Village foreshore hatching is now the same dark pink as the pink found in the wayfinding colors key. And the Marine Uplands and Foreshore Protection symbol has a transparent fill, but has the same dark pink outline. And now I'll pass the presentation back to Ms. Garnett.
Thanks, Andrea. And so the recommendations in the staff report are to forward bylaw 4424 to the board for consideration of first reading, to consider bylaw 4424 in conjunction with the CVRD's 5-year financial and solid waste management plans, that the bylaw 4424 be referred to the boards of education for school districts 68 and 79 and the Agricultural Land Commission, and finally that a public hearing be scheduled for the bylaw with directors from all 9 electoral areas as delegates. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Staff? No? Okay. Looks like go ahead then, Director Wilson.
I was just going to move the recommendation.
Moved and seconded. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Garnett. So the next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is R7, which is a report from the Planning Strategic Initiatives Division regarding bylaw number 4427, Development Permit Area 7, Landslide Hazard Amendment. And there is a 5-point recommendation before you.
Okay, and I see we have Ms. Breen and Mr. Moore. Welcome.
Good afternoon, directors. May we show a short presentation this afternoon?
Yes, please do.
So this afternoon, Mr. Moore from Environmental Services is joining us, and as is Andrea Cross, again, from the GIS division. So this is a joint presentation from 3 divisions. Mr. Moore is going to give just a high-level summary of the study process, a few of the highlights of the study. It was presented on March 23rd to Committee of the Whole. And then we'll conclude with just the overview of the recommendations that are included in the amended DPA 7, which I will speak to. So over to Mr. Moore.
Okay, welcome, Mr. Moore.
Thanks, Corley, and thanks to the chair. I'll just be really brief with this, and I'll be available for any technical questions that do arise. As Corley mentioned, most of this was presented in the at the Committee of the Whole on March 23rd. Essentially, the Environmental Services was working with community planning to look at regional landslides, and also with a focus in Saltaire, we did a coastal slope stability assessment there. So we had Stantec and Palmer were the consultants, and they looked at some new LiDAR that we had for the area and a series of historical ortho photos. And what they actually found was a series of large landslides, a couple of dozen of them, all along the coastline and up the Stocking Creek and Porter Creek ravines. And those were beyond the shallow superficial landslides that they were expecting to find. So some of these, they call them retrogressive landslides, extend back 100 meters or more from the coast. So recognizing that there's this new potential risk that we weren't really aware of before, the consultants went along the coastline with a series of cross sections and based on the previous landslides, looked at what the sort of the worst case scenario would be for the line of how far inland the impact of a landslide could potentially be in the future. And then they've added a 15-meter buffer onto that. So the primary recommendation coming out of the Stantec and Palmer work led to the DPA that's being brought forward today in terms of the boundaries of how far in from the coast. And in a number of cases, this encompasses entire properties and sometimes the road and other properties. So within that area, I believe that Carly will be speaking to more of the details, but we'd be looking for a higher level of geotechnical assessment to figure out what the actual risks are specific to that property. A lot of it depends on the underlying bedrock and things that were beyond the scope of the work that Stantec and Palmer did.
Thank you.
Hand it over to Carly.
Spring.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. So the DPA 7 amendment that is included in the staff report today is very similar to the current DPA 7 that's in bylaw 4270. The key changes are the reference to the technical report, the new technical report that Mr. Moore just spoke to, and the new mapping, which Ms. Cross will speak to in just a few moments. And these additional guidelines that are specifically for Saltaire Bluffs, which are recommendations from the report, I won't read them all to you, but these are very tagged on to the end of the DPA 7 amendment. And now over to Ms. Cross to speak to the changes in the mapping.
Thank you. So this slide is showing an excerpt of map UDPA 7.2. And again, we've got our U for Schedule U, DPA 7 landslide hazard, and this is the second map in the series in Area G, and this is the only map that is affected by bylaw 4427. It's just this one map. In this map, we are seeing that in the Saltaire area, the map on the left shows the landslide hazard as it was in bylaw 4270 as adopted, which is just the Saltaire Bluffs. And on the right, the landslide hazard data has been replaced by the data from the 2022 Coastal Slope Stability Assessment Saltaire study by Stantec and Palmer. Go to the next slide, please. You can see that it does go further inland, especially south of Davis Lagoon. And in that area, we'll note that there are some inland ravine areas. The one that's south of Davis Lagoon is along Stocking Creek. And the one further south that's along Olson and Oysterway roads going horizontally there is along Porter Creek. So the Coastal Slope Stability Assessment Study found that the lands in these ravines are potential landslide hazards in addition to the Saltaire Bluffs. And so they're included in this DPA. And now I'll pass the presentation back to Ms. Breen.
Thanks, Andrea. So the recommendations included in the staff report today is that CVRD bylaw 4427, the Electoral Area Official Community Plan Amendment bylaw 2022 be forwarded to the board for consideration of first reading. That bylaw 4427 be considered in conjunction with the CVRD's 5-year financial and solid waste management plans. That bylaw 4427 be referred to the Boards of Education of School Districts number 68 and 79. That a public information meeting be held for Electoral Area G Saltaire residents. That a public hearing be held for bylaw 4427 with the directors from electoral areas E, F, G, H, and I as delegates.
Great. Well, thank you very much to you all for that. So any questions for any of the staff Director Nicholson, and then Yanni DiNardo.
I had a question about the map. There was it looked like in the old map, and this is probably for Jeff Moore, it looked like there was a long, skinny part of the DPA that came inland, and it's now not on the new map. Do you know what that was about? Right about. Yeah, no, the last one. Yeah, on the left-hand map, you see the long, skinny thing that comes inland about almost halfway down. Or
Yeah,
more than
through the chair to Director Nicholson. Yeah, I do see that. I believe these were just parcels that were along the coast, so it could just be a parcel that extended a long way inland. I don't know if Andrea has any more information from what she can see with the maps.
Through the chair, I don't have any information on that at the moment. We could investigate that, though. Yeah.
I guess I just wondered if it was an old water course that was unstable or something of it. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Director Yanni DiNardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will be doing more of the landslide hazards. Will we not be doing more of this mapping?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Yeah, because this last atmospheric river kind of did, well, it showed in Area D at least our vulnerability even more so than we already had before it. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Smith. Sorry, Director Smith, you're muted.
Through the chair to staff, can it be also referred to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure?
Through the chair, it can be, but it's not a legal requirement on the OCP amendment.
Well, just a follow-up.
Yeah.
So is there a conversation as the Chemainus Road is heavily impacted with this study? And I'm just, we have concerns. We'd like to be able to go north or go south. So just wondering how we fit that into this referral and conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Green.
I think Mr. Moore is going to respond first.
Oh, okay. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair to Director Smith, we have had discussions already with the Ministry of Transportation about this, sharing the results with them, and we're continuing those. We've talked with, from a more regional perspective, with the manager with Ministry of Transportation is responsible for the south portion of the region, but we're still trying to set up a meeting with the equivalent person that is responsible for areas G and H, and bringing together both teams to look at a regional approach to this.
Okay, Director Smith. All right. Further questions? Seeing none. Has this been moved yet? Don't think so. Okay, moved and seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Ms. Saracen, we'll now move to the next item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is item R8. It's a report from the Planning Strategic Initiatives Division regarding bylaw number 4373, OCP for the electoral areas, community circles, and there is a two-part recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Who do we have with this? This looks like Ms. Garnett.
Yes, and here with Ms. Breen as well. We have a presentation if you'd like us to share that.
Yes, please.
All right. So this is report 8, the OCP for the electoral areas, bylaw 4373, communications and engagement update. let Ms. Breen lead us through this first slide.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett, and through the chair. This afternoon, we'd just like to present an overview of the amended consultation and engagement strategy, including updates on the community circle participation, which Ms. Scarnett will give in a few moments. And subsequent to previous discussion on the matter of in-person meetings and a resolution, in fact, to look at hosting those at the end of 2022 or early 2023. The second is to request approval of an amendment to the 2022 budget for function 325. And also, this is not included in the staff report, but we would like to add an additional recommendation to request direction for a special EASC meeting so that we can report on the local area plan report that's being researched and conducted concurrently with the community circles at this time. Okay. So now it's over to Ms. Garnett.
Thank you. So I'll just offer a little update on the community circles. Starting off with the CVRD-led community circles, we have so far hosted 8 of the 18 community circles. That 18 does not include the second round of circles focused on the local area plans that was originally proposed for the weekend of May 28th, 29th, and that I'll be speaking to on the next slide about proposing to be rescheduled. But there's been good uptake on the CVRD-led circles. So we have a total of 475 registrations. The facilitator training sessions have been very successful. 27 community members have participated in 4 facilitator training sessions, and additional sessions will continue to be offered at request. And as far as communications, we've had weekly ads in 4 local newspapers, monthly ads in 3 magazines, weekly posts on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and ads on Juice FM radio in March and April. So the amendments to the communications and engagement plan that is being proposed in the staff report is to reschedule the second round of CVRD-led community circles on the local area plans from May to November, which will allow us to host them in person rather than virtually. We will still be holding the first round of circles on the local area plans. And so that would be 4 meetings over May 14th, 15th, and 17th. Those will remain. And the idea was to repeat those circles in a second round. So just proposing here to postpone those to November, the second round to November. And secondly, the Ideas Fair would be rescheduled as well to November to be held concurrently with the November community circles and allow us to hold, to move from virtual to in-person. I'll pass it back to Ms. Breen.
Thank you.
So thank you. The recommendations today is that the amended consultation engagement strategy, which is updated April 2022, be approved. That the 2022 budget for Function 325 community planning be amended by increasing a transfer from operating reserve of $60,000, which was the amount previously included in the last staff report, and increase 6137 harmonization modernization expense by $60,000. And the additional recommendation that staff convene a special ESC meeting to present the consultant's report on the recommended local area plan development and the agriculture planning areas, which we're doing concurrently with the local area plan development. And we're happy to answer any questions or provide clarifications.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for either of our staff? Director Acton.
Yeah, I guess I can't remember if we are hiring some support for all of this engagement of advertising and social media. In my experience, when you just put stuff out there and there's no kind of follow-up or really strategic placement of where they go to, like what audiences you're talking to, they don't tend to draw a lot of people. So I was wondering, like this looks like a lot of that kind of, marketing is not staff specialty, I guess, don't take any offense. But, so I hope we're using consultants or marketing firms for some of this work.
Thank you, through the chair, to the directors. We do have some expert advice, some from Bone Creative, who's been doing a lot of the graphics work, and also assisting with the building of the website, the web platforms, the development of ads. We've been working with our own capable staff as well, Chris Shoemaker. Someone on social media who's an expert on social media, and we've spent quite a bit of time ourselves. We can report more fully on the numbers, particularly on Facebook, that we've been receiving, but they're up into the tens of thousands. We've actually been boosting a lot of those ads. We know that on YouTube, for example, our community circle video is almost at 30,000 views now. So we do have some hard numbers that we can report back on the next time we report back. We're certainly not offended at all, and we welcome the opportunity because we're learning as well.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, Director Nicholson?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have as much of the question as sort of a comment that I find I've been in the background. I have a constituent who doesn't have computer access and really wanted to do the community circles and has been very diligent in coming to all of them. So I've provided my computer and I sort of am in the background doing other work. But I have noticed that they are extremely well done. And she keeps telling me how good they are, the community circles that have been CVRD led on Zoom. But I am a little bit disappointed in the attendance, the numbers of people that are attending. And she also commented on how much content it is. It is really hard. It is really hard that every single policy area requires a lot of thought and time to think to work through it. So I mean, I really commend what we're trying to do here. I think it will be really interesting when we get to the local area plan ones. And I'm wondering, and I'm really pleased to see that we're planning to do some in-person ones in the fall. I think that's a good move. I am a little bit concerned that there will be more attendance to those because people sort of see themselves more in their plans. And I'm just wondering if it would be good to get a lot of people out to those. And I'm just wondering if there's going to be enough opportunity in May for that. Wondering if staff have thought about that and whether there's an opportunity to do a bit more.
Okay.
Through the chair, I think that the additional session in November, because we agree that we'd love to see hundreds of people out into our Zoom meetings, will help with that. You'll find, I think, with the local area plans that it'll be more interactive because it's less policy as it will be with maps and drawing maps, that type of thing. So it's going to be a very different focus. So the second opportunity, I think, because we're reviewing how our own CVRD-led circles are going, yes, we've had very good response, but we would like to see, a greater turnout. That's why we've making the recommendation to go into the in-person to compensate for that. That said, we know we've trained almost 30 people to be facilitators, and we know that those meetings are convening, and we will not know until the end of May what kind of uptake we've had on that and that degree of participations. And what we've heard is that it's strong, but we just won't be able to judge that for another 6 weeks or so.
Okay, thank you. Director Smith. Sorry, Director Smith. Muted again.
Okay.
No.
I think this has been an amazing learning process for all of us, staff, along with the communities. I'm not really sure there's a good connection between the policies that are actually going to impact our communities. I think people are so focused on that local area plan because that's what they've always had, is their own plan. And when I talk to people, I try to bring in those policies and I just don't see them grasping them. And it's more focused in just wanting that local area plan. So I'm not sure how we make that really good connection. And with the policies, you know, when I did have an opportunity to go and listen to the two different ones before changes were made, I noticed that I attended the infrastructure one and then I attended the communities one. And it was interesting that the people at the communities ones weren't thinking about infrastructure. So, you know, they also didn't take that infrastructure information with them into that extra circle. So I'm not really sure how we move all of these pieces together in this puzzle for them. And maybe we're missing something. I don't know how we would do that. Maybe Director Acton has some creative idea, but you know, I think that there is some definitely missteps, or not missteps, but just how do we get this puzzle so that all those pieces fit together? Because we don't want them missing out on infrastructure because they're headed down another direction, or they're missing out on agriculture because their head's in another one. We need to get them to look at this as a whole community for it. So maybe we have some ideas out there for capturing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't see anyone jumping to answer, but I had Director Morrison's hand up. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to sort of echo both a little bit of what Director Nicholson and Director Smith have said. I'm personally feeling a little sense of disconnect in the volume of material that is being produced by staff, and you know, to date it seems that it's a good quality product, but the disconnect that I speak of is the a little bit of what Director Smith has just said. People, you know, they will focus on their local area plan, but not so much a broader overreaching policy that, and I know we're having our special meetings and we're having discussions about various aspects of the product that's being produced, but it's an awful big ask to have members of the public consume and digest the volume of material and to be able to contemplate on a region-wide perspective, and then, you know, all of that, and then drill down to your local area plan. And so I'm experiencing that myself, in that there's a lot of material here and a lot of reading to do, and being able to relate it to the average member of the public who will come to one of these I'm not sure that connection is actually you know, fully being made. So just an observation for staff to contemplate whether or not this is an area that we might be able to improve the communication between, you know, the community, the planners, and even us to some extent.
Thank you. Okay. Any further comments? Looks like, so we're looking at a 3-part recommendation now with the additional ESC meeting. So would someone like to move that? Moved and seconded. Ms. Harrison?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I just get some clarification on the third point?
And Ms. Breen?
Yeah.
Yes, through the chair. clarification that staff's directed to organize a special ESC meeting for the report on the local area plans and the agriculture plans. Thank you.
Right, as in your presentation, so if Kathleen needs it. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd like to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we have 4 left plus unfinished business. I think we better take a 5-minute leg stretch and come back to hopefully finish these off. See everyone at 4:45. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're buffering.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are live.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back, everyone. So let's move to the next item on the agenda, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is R9, which is a report from the Community Planning Division regarding referral from Municipality of North Cowichan zoning amendment application. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that the Municipality of North Cowichan be informed that the interests of the Cowichan Valley Regional District are unaffected by zoning amendment application for Lot B, 3288 Cowichan Lake Road.
Okay, has that been moved? Seconded? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. So the next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item on the agenda is R10. It's a report from the Community Planning Division regarding Development Services Modernization Process Update. And this report is for recommendation, or sorry, for information.
For information, okay, thank you. And do we have Ms. Breen?
The report
okay,
was from me. Yeah.
Hi.
So welcome. I can speak to the report. I don't have a presentation, but I can share a portion of the table from my report later on. So this is to provide information on the current status of the Development Services Modernization Process, which we refer to as DSMP amongst staff. This process started in 2021 following a grant application to the UBCM Development Approvals Program, which the CVRD was successful in achieving. This also implements the 2020 Development Services Review recommendations and the 2020 to 2022 Service Enhancement Plan that was presented by the General Manager in November 2020. And so with the grant funding, it involves the acquisition and implementation of land management software. So this will involve all of the divisions within the Land Use Services Department, as well as other departments. And it will include processing of development applications, building permits and inspections, bylaw enforcement complaints, dog licensing, and we'll also have an online public portal component to it. And so in the fall of last year, an interdivisional working group was established and held 3 initial meetings, including participation from external referral agencies to discuss development approvals. And in January of 2022, a contract for project management services for the land management software system selection was awarded to eGov Solutions, who's also supporting the CVRD with the implementation of asset management software. So staff have been working with eGov and with an interdivisional system selection team of staff to develop the request for expressions of interest, which is expected to be ready by the end of May. And so this will allow submissions from software providers and will assist with the development and issuance of an RFP for land management software, which is expected to be issued by September 2022. And we will also have assistance from eGov for the implementation of the software, which will be quite extensive and will involve training for staff, for commissions and elected officials, as well as a public engagement component, as well as engagement with First Nations, and the development, updating and development of all of our public resources as well. So I'm just going to share my table here just to show the timeline. So we're looking to acquire the software by the end of this year, and the implementation is expected to take a large portion of 2023. And we've also, at the same time, we'll be continuing to engage with external referral agencies and updating our staff resources. And we've also so far have been updating our website on the development services page. We've added a realtor portal with resources for realtors. We've also added pages with frequently asked questions under development services and under building inspection. And we're in the process of updating our the development handbook. So we'll be breaking that down into separate guides for different application types. Also updating the APC handbook as well. And then I've noted some other updates and tools there. And so, as I mentioned, once we select the software and have a better understanding of the procedures and the needs for the software, we'll be having to continually update our public and internal procedures and documents. And I also noted in the report a number of related bylaws that have already been adopted and that are in process. And I think that covers the report. I can respond to any questions of the directors.
Thank you, Director Acton and then Wilson.
Thank you. It was a very thorough report, but this is maybe more of a generalized comment, because we're talking about communication and relaying information. I think that our website is extremely difficult to navigate or find any information, and we're talking about like adding more information. So I'm not sure if CVRD as a whole has given it some thought of maybe having, I don't know how you would organize it. Perhaps you'd have departments that have their own separate website or something. I don't know what the experts would say, but it's not generally, a website is no longer a place that is just filled with all information. So it's really challenging. You know, users, whatever the stats are, look at something for 8 seconds and that's it, they're done. So, and so that's just a comment there. And then, you know, we are talking about communication and getting the word out and everything. And the other thing that I hope we'll talk about one day, I guess at the board level, is like trying to call here is such a challenge. I don't know if other people have had this. So I think as a whole kind of like maybe sub-strategy, we need a plan of like making things easier for the public as far as getting in touch with people directly and getting in, you know, through the system that picks up when you call and the website in general. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go next to Director Wilson.
If I could just,
Ms. Pressman, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand that there is a comprehensive website update planned for this year for the entire CVRD website. I will note also that I didn't particularly refer to, but was in my report. So one thing we're looking to do to be able to more easily provide information on current applications is to add a new tool under Plan Your Cowichan to show information on current major applications, like major rezonings that would be going to public hearing, to be able to provide information in a more easily accessible way. And then also noted, we've updated, they'll be posted later this week, but we've revised the way that we'll be posting current development application tables to be organized by electoral area instead of by application type. So that will be up later this week.
Follow up, Director Acton.
Well, I just wanted to add, the other challenge is also, like, thank you for that. And I'm glad there's a plan on those things. But is trying to get agendas and information that is also, like, through the portal is not the easiest software and mechanism as well. Anyway, just my comments. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So, Director Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question on costs, and I see that there's 370k which we've already approved under the budgets, and you were successful in getting 500k on grant from UBCM. Are you putting in any more grant applications in support of this? Because I'm sure it's going to come to a lot more than what we're talking about so far. So basically, are more grant applications going in to various places? Thank you.
Ms. Pressman?
I'm not aware of any currently.
Okay. I don't see other stuff popping up, so we'll have to check into that. All right, Director Morrison, please.
Thank you. And I too read the report, and it very detailed in a agenda that had a lot of detailed reports. I want to just make a comment. Don't need an answer today. Well, maybe it will come in the form of a question, but I'm really interested to know what the end user experience is going to be like when we are through 2023. Implementation is fully in stream. We've done all the work. Like I understand the division of responsibilities where we are governance, and this is, you know, almost like an iceberg where most of the work is operational and within staff. I get that part, but much along the lines of what Director Acton has asked is, how does the end user experience in what we're building, what we're creating, going to be improved? How is this going to make it easier if we refer a member of the public to our website. I like to have a little clearer understanding, because the genesis of this has come from a very challenging network of things that need to happen for an application to proceed. So if we could perhaps, not today, and I don't need an explanation today, but if we had some explanation as to how this is shaping up from the operational perspective and what it will hopefully look like as an improved user experience at the end, that would be a helpful thing for me to understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pressman?
For clarification, you're referring to the public experience with the implementation of the software?
Well, not just the public experience. Okay. I guess in one sense we're sort of public on steroids, so to speak, in that we're often the biggest user of processes and staff in our interaction with applications and files and that sort of thing. So what's this going to look like for a director in 2024 and 2025? How would it be different then than what the regime we're under now? And maybe too, how would this be an improved experience for members of the public between 2024 and now? And I'd like to know what the tangible benefits are of all the work that's being done on this. And like I say, I don't need an answer today.
Through the chair, I can speak to some of that, and we can provide a more comprehensive description to the committee as well of what the experience of the software will be. But some of the components will be that, I mean, right now internally for staff, there's a number of different ways that we're trying to operate without the software that will be improved. So saving a lot of time for staff with right now, like updating, using Excel spreadsheets, and having to have people come in to take payments, and just being able to track the status of applications. Building inspection will be able to use the software as well to conduct inspections on site and be able to enter that right away. So they're using different software right now than, for instance, there's bylaw enforcement is using GIS for tracking complaints. And so we have a number of different ways we're trying to get it to operate without the software. And then for the public experience as well, being able to submit an application through the website rather than filling out a PDF of a form or a hard copy of a form, being able to pay online for applications, submit payments for applications, and potentially for deposits online as well. Being able to automatically upload the status of applications as well. Those are some of the components.
Great. Thank you. And I'm going to remember that, Director Morrison, that we're us as the public on steroids. Director Nicholson.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Pressman, for this great report. So I think what I've been listening to the other directors comment on is really our really that we think we need to improve our corporate communications in general, which I think is beyond just the planning front. And it would be really nice if maybe our EASC chair could take that message forward, that it would be, we would be interested in a conversation about corporate communications, because there are some major frailties with things as they stand. I want to go back to just a thing that's been on my mind, and I've raised it numerous times, is about just just the communication with directors on applications, which I think looks like the internal procedures for applications, referrals, development review team, etc. All of that will be resolved by Q3 from your chart. So I am thinking Q3 ends in September, at the end of September. And so I am wondering if we're going to be having a conversation with you about any of that, of our needs, first of all, as part of that. And secondly, do I really have to wait till the end of September when I potentially won't be around very much longer to see some improvement?
I can specifically regarding referrals. I can tell you that we have developed a draft referral policy for the EASC and for APCs that will be coming forward, I believe, next month.
Ms. Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, for the committee, we actually have a report that was ready to go for this meeting, but given the length of the agenda, we under the chair's advisement, move that to your next meeting. So there will be a report coming on referrals specifically, and that will sort of provide an open door to have a broader conversation about communication.
Great, thank you. All right, seeing no further, that was for information. So thank you, Ms. Pressman.
Thank you.
And we will move on, Ms. Harrison, to the next item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is item R11, which is a report from the Emergency Management Division regarding Malahat Goldstream Heights Fire Service Review. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that the 2022 budget for Function 355 Fire Protection Malahat be amended to increase consultants' expenditures by $5,000 and increase transfer from operating reserve by $5,000. And number two, that the 2022 budget for Function 325 Community Planning be amended to increase consultants' expenditures by $12,000 and increase transfer from operating reserve by $12,000.
Okay, thank you. And I see we have our fire protection staff has joined us. Welcome. Did you want to say anything or just here for questions?
Just here for questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Director Acton.
Just moving the resolution, I thought, because since it was read.
Okay, yeah, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Director Nicholson, did you have a question?
I have a question.
Okay.
I am very supportive of this. However, I think I've had funding in my budget for a fire service review for Satlan for a number of years, and I'm wondering when that's going to happen.
Okay.
Short answer or long answer to the chair? Very soon.
Short. You happy with that, Director Nicholson? Very soon. Okay. Any other questions? All in favor?
Oh, I had a question.
Oh, sorry, Director Acton, go ahead.
I'm in favor of it, but is this going to include some of the, is this going to include any ways of getting people to join the service who haven't? Is there any communication involved in this?
That's part of what we'd like to do with the fire service review. Is that particular area is quite a challenge to get to, if you will, response for volunteers responding to emergencies. And this fire service review will hopefully identify where some of the areas are that we can draw volunteers from to bolster the ranks of the fire department. That particular area is quite remote, a little challenging to get to, especially in adverse weather conditions. And we want to place the satellite fire hall, if it is deemed necessary, in an area where volunteers can respond quickly and efficiently to, and then mount an effective fire suppression force. So that's all part and parcel of the fire service review.
is where are we going to get the volunteers from? Where are they responding from? And what are the response times?
Great. Follow up, Director Atkin.
That's good information. But I was kind of also thinking about, is it gonna like have a plan for the areas that you're gonna target for people who have opted out? Like so that you could include more properties?
Yeah, I think you're getting at the fire inclusion petitions. Is that correct? Through the chair. So the next plan of attack, as I mentioned in previous meetings, there are approximately 76 property owners up in that area that are not in fire protection, and we are going to do a mail out very shortly to those approximately 76 landowners saying, do you realize you're outside of fire protection? Would you like to get in? This is what it's going to cost you, and please sign the petition. And we'll do a mass petition, if you will, to get those people included.
Okay, thank you for asking that, Director Atkin. Ms. Troff was up. We must have covered what she wanted. Any further questions? No? Okay, I'd like to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, Ms. Harrison, next item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is item R12, and it's a report from the General Manager, Land Use Services Department regarding temporary expanded service area authorizations. And this is for direction.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Troff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The staff are seeking the committee's direction with respect to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch's plans to extend temporary service authorizations for another year. And this is actually only applicable to 2 properties. Well, it applies to 3 properties. There are 3 properties that currently have, or 3 businesses that currently have TESAs within CVRD electoral areas that were identified in the report: the Black Swan Inn, Red Arrow Brewing Company, and Bridgman's Bistro. And you received a report on the Black Swan Inn earlier in the meeting, and with the intent for their temporary authorization to be converted to a permanent one. So going forward, this would really apply to the remaining 2 businesses. Our bylaw enforcement staff have not received any complaints or concerns about operations with respect to those businesses. So we have no issues with the staff have no issues with the TSAs being extended, but wanted to provide obviously the board with the opportunity to provide any comments to the province if there are any concerns.
Okay, thank you. Is that moving the recommendation? Director Atkin? Yeah?
Yes.
Now just a second. Director Yana DiNardo, or did you want to?
Staff recommendation.
Okay, any questions or discussion? Director Martman. Oh, sorry, first I better go to Ms. Harrison.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, could I just get clarification? Is that option 1 or option 2?
Oh, which was it? Option 1?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Director Martman?
That was my question.
Okay, good. Any other questions? That was a good question. Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. The next item is unfinished business, UB1. It's a report from the Parks and Trails Division regarding Parkland Dedication Covenant for Lytton Road Subdivision, SA 18G01 for PID 000125954. And this was referred from the February 23rd, 2022 board meeting. And the applicant from Turner and Associates is in the lobby, and I'll just admit them.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, the applicant has been admitted. I've just sent them a chat to turn on the camera. Oh, you
Yeah,
can
here
say
we
hello.
go. Welcome, welcome, Mr. Snurch.
Hi, sorry, I had no audio there.
No worries, welcome. Okay, how do we proceed? Does staff have something to say about this one, or Mr. Farquhar?
Mr. Chair, if I may, this matter was referred from the board meeting back in February to the Electoral Area G Community Parks Advisory Commission. You have in the agenda and dealt with it earlier under information, their meeting of March 22nd, to which they've also they made a recommendation back to the committee and the board. And if I can read it out, it was moved and seconded based on the greater long-term value of green space. Be recommended that 0.2275 hectares of land registered by way of covenant P61174 be allocated towards parkland dedication within the Lytton Road subdivision. So this is the recommendation coming back from your Area G Community Parks Advisory Commission from their meeting, with this matter being referred to them. So both the report and their minutes are on your agenda. And Mr. Snurch is here from Turner Surveying and Associates. If the committee has any questions for Mr. Snurch about the recommendation that the Advisory Commission is giving back to the committee for consideration.
Okay, thank you. So does anyone have any questions? Director Nicholson.
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused here. So the Parks Commission is not recommending cash in lieu, but the staff are. Is that what I understand?
Mr. Farquhar.
Mr. Chair, that's correct. The report that previously came before the committee and went to the board was recommending cash in lieu. The referral to the Advisory Commission, they are recommending through to the committee and the board that park land versus cash in lieu be looked at for this subdivision. And Mr. Church has certainly given some consideration with the owner in terms of how park dedication can be accommodated within the subdivision. They're proposing that the area within the northeast corner of proposed lot 8 be identified for the park dedication. So if you look to the attachment in the staff report, you will see lot 8, or the proposed lot 8 in the subdivision. They are proposing the portion of land of proposed lot 8 along Grandview Road and the area dedicated for roads. So the northeast corner of lot 8 for park.
That was attachment A?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Director Smith.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the applicant for all the time involved in this. I support the recommendation by the Area G Parks Advisory Commission. I would like to make my motion, if you can wait 2 seconds while I try and link in there. Thank you.
Okay.
That it be recommended to the board that the 0.2275 hectares of land registered by way of covenant P61174 be allocated towards parkland dedication within the Lytton Road subdivision.
Okay. And Director Kuhn, you seconded that? Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Schnert.
Thanks.
Okay, next item, please, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next item is question period. I did have 2 applicants, but I don't see them in the lobby. I'm just going to send them a quick reminder.
Okay. We might have outlasted them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've sent reminders.
Okay, thank you. So we're, do we have anything else to do in the meantime, or that was the final item?
That was the final item, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, let's give them 1 minute and see if we have any questions. I also had an emailed question, I believe, did we not? I don't know what I do with that, if anything, but can't find it at the moment either, so I guess I'm not going to do too much.
Director Nicholson, your microphone is on.
Don't you like the kids in the background?
That's what I heard, so I knew it had to be you.
I thought it was a dog.
It was really cute. They were singing all these lovely little songs a little while ago. I love it.
Well, Mr. Chair, they do not appear to be attending, so the
All right.
next item would be adjournment.
Okay, motion to adjourn. All in favor? Good. Thank you very much, everyone. Long meeting.
Good job, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Blaze.
Good night, everyone.